Welcome back to the world of Pokemon, a world not too different from our own, but one that's built a society based around the existence of highly intelligent monsters that serve as the backbone to their day-to-day lives. You already know the deal, people catch these creatures in Pokeballs, train them, battle them, and the best of the best climb a ladder of gym leaders to face the Elite Four for a shot at becoming the champion. Last time we covered where it all started, Pokemon Red and Blue, taking place in the Kanto region of the Pokemon universe. And seeing how they caught this lightning in a bottle, they immediately started working to do it again, before the games were even localized in the West. The pressure was now on Game Freak to deliver a sequel that went beyond just living up to the originals, and the result was one of the most perfectly packaged sequels I have ever played. This is the Johto region, a region that is a cozy blend of old and new.
It's a whole new world we live in.
Ancient pagodas, old folklore, all mixed up with cutting-edge radio towers and department stores. Monks, mediums, geishas, and businessmen share the same streets. This region has a much richer identity, one deeply rooted in Japanese history and tradition, bundled with the excitement of a new millennium. And this is us. Again. But we're even cooler this time because our hat is backwards. A brand new trainer once again being pimped out by Professor Oak and his colleague Professor Elm to go on a journey to do their research for them under the pretense of becoming a Pokemon champion. We're covering everything these sequels had to offer, including the monumental improvements to the Pokemon formula and how Game Freak, Creatures Inc. and Nintendo built this brand into something much more. Welcome to Origin Oracle, the Pokemon Edition. Previously, we guided a young trainer on the path to becoming the champion of Indigo Plateau. We defeated the 8 gym leaders of the Kanto region, crushed a crime syndicate called Team Rocket, who wished to steal and use Pokemon for nefarious deeds, and we overcame the Elite Four and our childhood friend and rival to become the champion. 3 years have passed since this happy ending, and our perspective shifts to the region of Johto, a quieter, more mysterious land, and home to newly discovered Pokemon. This is the setting for Pokemon Gold and Silver, released for the Game Boy Color first in Japan in November 1999, and North America in October of 2000. An enhanced version of these titles, called Pokemon Crystal, followed about a year later, complete with added story content, new areas to explore, and animated sprites. This is the definitive way to experience Pokemon Generation 2, so that's what we'll be running this time around. Of course, I'll be flagging when something in the game is Crystal exclusive. Our journey begins in New Bark Town, another sleepy hamlet tucked away in a quiet corner of the Johto region, as we take control of a brand new trainer. But before we even get to that familiar moment of heading out on a life-changing journey again, the game is already showing off from the moment you turn on the power switch. Each version spotlighting a different legendary Pokemon we haven't met yet. These smooth cinematic sequences that mask them in this mystery and allure.
Oh my god, what is that?
You can already tell the game is going to be different. We hit new game, and before anything else, the game asks us to set the time. Our actual time. But we'll see what that means for gameplay soon enough. In Crystal, there is also the option to play as a girl for the first time in the series, an addition which would be implemented in future games from this point on. And just like the previous titles, we begin in our room. And I know the Game Boy Color is strutting some more powerful tech than the original Game Boy, but the details here are still interesting to observe. The wooden finish on the walls, the finer details on the furniture. Pokemon Gen 2 uses color to evoke a deeper sense of depth by emphasizing shadows, and we'll see more of this when we start looking at Pokemon sprites. We head downstairs and we're greeted by our mom, who tells us Professor Elm is looking for us to run an errand for him. She gives us a device called Pokegear. Developed by Silphco, it keeps track of time, date, location, and even has built-in phone and radio capabilities. She also sets the day of the week for us, so yes, the specific day of the week will determine certain events that trigger in-game. One strange Crystal exclusive moment here, by the way, is that our mom is chatting with a friend whose daughter apparently wants to become Professor Elm's assistant. After this, we never see this woman again, and I'm kind of curious as to why she was included in the first place. Was it just to give your mom a friend? I'm not against it, but seems like a very specific detail that was added. Anyway, we step outside and immediately we're hit with that atmosphere. When I first played this game, I started my game at night, and I remember it being mind-blowing to me that it was also nighttime in New Bark Town as well. And this calm lullaby of its theme already shows the vibe of Johto is different from Kanto. A song with that same comfort as Pallet Town, but with like oomph, you know? I'm gonna be gushing about this game's soundtrack a lot, so consider this your warning. Anyway, we head next door to Professor Elm's lab, and a red-headed delinquent seems to be casing the place. Talk to him and he's unnecessarily hostile, so we want nothing to do with that and go visit Professor Elm. This is the resident professor of Johto, and unlike Oak, who seems more fixated on Pokemon species discovery, Professor Elm specializes in studying Pokemon evolution, a mechanic that was a huge part of the original games, but was vastly expanded in Generation 2. He asked for our help raising one of 3 Pokemon he recently acquired for his research, and also wants us to visit a man named Mr. Pokemon, who apparently has some big discovery to share. But first, we pick our starter. Cyndaquil, the Fire Mouse Pokemon. This is not a mouse. Many agree Cyndaquil looks more like an echidna or a porcupine. It's called the Fire Mouse Pokemon because it's translated from Hinezumi, which means a fire mouse, based on Chinese mythology. This is not a mouse. Chikorita, the leaf Pokemon, who is the harder starter to run the early game with, and Totodile, the big jaw Pokemon. I'm a sucker for water types, and Totodile is one of my favorite Pokemon, so we'll select him for this run. Before we head out, Professor Elm gives us his phone number, allowing us to use the Pokegear to contact him at any time, which is essentially how the phone system works in this game. Select trainers we meet will give us their number, and they'll actually call sometimes with leads on active Pokemon in their area, helping you nail down those rare catches, or maybe they'll invite you to have a battle rematch. Sometimes they have rare items to give you, but most of the time they have nothing useful to say. We'll experience plenty of that. Now that we're on our way, there's not much else to say about New Bark Town for now. To the east, there's a body of water that we can't traverse yet. A couple other houses, home to other townsfolk, namely Professor Elm's wife and child. And just like Pallet Town, the name New Bark represents new beginnings. In Japanese, it's known as wakaba, a word used to describe the color of budding spring leaves. So the budding of our journey takes us west through Route 29. To the north of here, there's an inaccessible mountain path, so for now we just continue west. And though we can't catch Pokemon yet, we can encounter them in the wild to start training up our Totodile. And at first glance, it's apparent there are new Pokemon available to us, like Sentret during the day, and Hoot Hoot, the owl Pokemon, at night. But the game makes sure to show that classic Pokemon from Generation 1 are also at our disposal, namely Rattata, who seems to pop up everywhere in this game, I'm not exaggerating. The battle system is identical to Gen 1, with us still having the option to fight a Pokemon, switch out Pokemon mid-battle, use items, or flee from wild Pokemon. But one major change to battling is the expansion of the special stat. In Gen 2, this was split up into special attack and special defense, which increased the aspects of battling strategy. But the major glow up here are the Pokemon sprites. While the backgrounds are still minimal and mostly white, this makes the colors of the sprites pop even more. You can see the use of different shades to emphasize the shadows I mentioned earlier. Just look at Gengar, for instance, mostly black as if covered in a ghostly shadow, purple shade almost rippling off his edges. It just gives him so much more personality here. Just to emphasize the amount of work that went into art design this time around, Gold and Silver had unique sprites in each version for both front and back views of each Pokemon. And when Crystal hit the scene for the first time, Pokemon were animated at the start of battle. This is the cherry on top right here. Speaking of cherries, Route 29 leads us into the neighboring town of Cherrygrove City, another peaceful settlement located right by the sea. Cherrygrove is very much a tutorial town. There's even a guide here that will give us an unnecessary tour of the place. I triggered this by accident, but was happy to find out he'll give you the map card for your Pokegear, which allows you to take a look at the region of Johto as a whole and determine where your location is in that exact moment. This is also our first town that contains our ever-important Pokemon Center and Pokemart. While Kanto's cities were named after colors, we'll find the cities of Johto are all based on plants, which I think is fitting for its older and more natural setting. So our little errand for Professor Elm requires us to travel a bit further north through Route 30 to Mr. Pokemon's house. And the game starts littering new mechanics for you along the way, like these small trees that contain berries that can be picked. Now a series staple, Gen 2 introduced berries as a new natural source of healing for your Pokemon. And the real upside is that you can have your Pokemon hold them. Give your Pokemon a berry and they'll eat it mid-battle on their own without wasting a turn. Heal HP, cure poison, cure paralysis, all automatically. Though they're rocking much less elegant names than later titles like Priz Cure Berry. But the mechanic itself is huge and extremely useful for keeping your Pokemon in the fight. And held items aren't just limited to berries. Pokemon can hold all sorts of objects that will increase their power, help them evolve, or have different effects in battle. We'll explore more of this system as we go along. But finally we arrive at Mr. Pokemon's house, and it turns out he wanted Professor Elm to examine a mystery egg given to him by an old couple that runs a Pokemon daycare. He hands it to us for safekeeping for now, and oh! Professor Oak jump scare. Yeah, and you know exactly what he wants. A new child to do his research for him. Without our consent, he gives us a Pokédex and sends us out like the research mule we actually are. Between Elm, Mr. Pokemon, and Oak, this whole intro is 3 researchers all having us do work for them. Before we can even get our bearings after being handed a Pokemon egg and a Pokédex, Professor Elm gives us an emergency call and hangs up before telling us what happened. People, in real life, please do not do this, especially when it's not an emergency. But whatever, we haul ass back toward New Barktown, but before we can leave Cherrygrove, we once again bump into that red-haired delinquent, who very brazenly tells us that our new Pokemon is a waste on us, and then challenges us to a battle. So here we go, our very first rival fight for this game. Yeah, this jerk is our rival for the rest of the game. So question mark here whips out Chikorita. Much like our rival in the first game, his starter depends on ours and will always be the type we're weak to. Still, without it knowing any grass type moves yet, this is an easy win for our Totodile. And after his loss, he introduces himself as the man who plans to be the world's greatest Pokemon trainer before shoving us out the way.
Wow, what an asshole.
See, rivals can get much worse than our previous one. But at least that guy was given his starter Pokemon. This guy, will come to find out, stole his. We're dealing with a criminal this time. So when we return to Professor Elm's lab, it's revealed that Chikorita was stolen by ... to which the police ask us if we got his name. I love the presentation here. It's just funny he told us earlier his name was 3 question marks instead of just having us name him then. But I'll go with the canon name this time around and call him Silver. We catch up Elm on the mystery egg and Pokédex, and I guess that's all it takes for him to see us as having the potential to become the champion. He suggests that we go off to take the gym challenge, so say less, it's time to skip town and go on an adventure, I guess. But before we set off, we say goodbye to Mom, who suggests that she'll save money for us as we progress. This is a cool feature that keeps the parental figure relevant. As we win battles and earn money, a portion gets sent to her, and she'll buy items for us and even decorations for our room. Seeing this game shares producers with 1994's Earthbound, I'm positive this was inspired by Ness's dad in that game, who would also occasionally call you and give you fatherly advice. Our first gym is located in Violet City, so we'll have to double back the way we came with the ability to catch Pokemon now unlocked. There's a tutorial that shows you how to catch them, handled by some dude literally named Dude, standing outside New Bark. So thanks, Dude. Since it was nighttime while I was playing, I went ahead and caught a Hoot for our team for that early flying damage, and then pressed on toward Route 31 toward Violet City. Along the way, there is an entrance to Dark Cave, but to properly explore it, we would need both Flash and Surf. Still, it's cool that there are these areas that we see early on, even though you can't fully access them yet. It makes Johto feel much less linear than Kanto in comparison. And in that regard, as we see later down the line, there are even branching paths we can take and totally skippable areas. But for now, we continue west into Violet City, the city of nostalgic scent. My gosh, this music. This is probably one of the most nostalgic tracks in the game for me. Since it's our first time leaving home and we're in no rush, why not see the sights and let that music play a little longer before we confront the gym leader? And Violet is still kind of a quieter village despite having the title of city. Major places of interest include the Pokemon School, where you can learn general game mechanics. It was funny to me it was titled Earl's Pokemon School because I looked everywhere in this building for Earl to no avail. But Violet City's major landmark is an old pagoda to the north known as Sprout Tower, a wobbling tower reaching over 100 feet tall, maintained by monks who mostly train Bellsprout. The old tales say that the swaying pillar in the center was once a giant Bellsprout, now wobbling to protect the building from earthquakes. And this sets the stage because Johto is going to have plenty of old folklore like this as we go along. It's here where we can battle the monks and their Bellsprout as we ascend the tower, while this banging music plays in the background, setting that old traditional Japanese tone. And if you're here at night, you can also catch Ghastly pretty early for that ghost coverage, which I added to the team. And of course, plenty of Rattata here if you haven't run into enough of these by now. I think Sprout Tower is the first moment where Pokemon feels intentionally Japanese. This was no accident. Generation 1's Kanto region was loosely based on the real Kanto region of Japan, the area where Tokyo is. But if you didn't know that as a kid, you probably would never make the connection. The localization and setting itself was pretty culturally neutral.
These donuts are great!
But this time, Game Freak leaned into Johto differently, with it being based primarily on the Kansai region of Western Japan, home of cities like Kyoto and Nara, places with deep historical importance to Japanese history, and both of which served as old capitals. Temples and castles are common here, and the kanji characters that spell out the name Johto mean castle capital. So if we layer the map of Kansai over Johto, Violet City puts us right in the Nara region. Many tourists probably know this as the place where you go to see those wild deer hanging out, but Nara was the oldest official capital of Japan as early as 710 Common Era. This is home to some of the oldest remaining temples and shrines in Japan, with Sprout Tower possibly being a reference to Buddhist temples like Kofukuji or Horyuji, built in the 600s. Horyuji was built with a central pillar in the middle called a shinbashira, made from Japanese cypress, a style of architecture that allows the tower to sway and resist earthquakes, a technique still used to this day for skyscrapers in earthquake-prone areas. And you can go still see Horyuji in Nara today, with it being the oldest wooden structure in the world, and its giant bellsprout pillar in the center dating back to 594 Common Era. All that to say, I'll continue making connections like this as we go along, because Game Freak weren't shy with them in this game. We reach the top of Sprout Tower and we meet Elder Lee, fresh off of a battle from our rival. So we also get the opportunity to face him, and it's no surprise he's wielding Bellsprout. And for winning this short battle, he gives us HM5, Flash, an ability that allows us to traverse dark caves like the one we saw earlier. So once we're out of this tower, there's actually a very early trade here in Violet City if you manage to catch a Bellsprout in the surrounding wilderness. This guy will give you an Onyx named Rocky in exchange for one. And I originally meant for Rocky here to be a placeholder, but he became one of the most useful Pokemon on the team for me this go around. Also, while healing my Pokemon from Sprout Tower battles, we actually run into Earl. There he is, barking outside the Pokemon Center. He'll ask us to join him at this school, and because he's depicted as a foreigner, the localization team decided it was best he spoke like Yoda. Interestingly enough, this guy is called Giovanni in the Japanese version, so it's pretty obvious why they couldn't keep that name in the English release. What are the odds? But with our sightseeing trip out of the way, it's time to confront the first gym leader of the game, Faulkner.
'Cause tonight will be the night that I will fall for you.
Master of flying types. And for the first time, we hear Johto's gym leader theme. Something about this theme always made things feel more tense than Red and Blue's. Don't get me wrong, I love the original gym battle theme, but Johto seems to carry more weight, as does the entire soundtrack. Before I had my own headphones, I used to just hold the little tiny Game Boy Color speaker up to my ear so I could take this all in. Is it obvious that I think this soundtrack is goated? Because it is. Faulkner is pretty memorable to me, but he's definitely not the wake-up call that Brock was. Even if you're at a disadvantage with a grass type like Chikorita, because there are options in the wild that can help you take him down. Still, Faulkner's no pushover. He's rocking a Pidgey and Pidgeotto, and though their levels are somewhat low at level 7 and 9 respectively, these two are cracked out with one move that makes all the difference. Mud Slap. Who would have thought he would have used Mud Slap? This is a flying type using a ground type move, which gives Faulkner genius levels of type coverage. Let me explain. Flying types are weak to electric, ice, and rock types, and strong against grass fighting and bug. By this point of the game, you'll have access to your fire, water, or grass starter, and whatever you manage to catch on those early routes. So by using Mud Slap, this Pidgey and Pidgeotto have a super effective answer to Cyndaquil. Pidgeotto can also use Gust, which was changed from a normal to a flying move in this generation, but this is also super effective against grass. Kata Ghastly, Ghost Poison dual type. Ground is super effective against poison. Rock Pokemon? Mud Slap would handle those too, even against a rock ground type like Onyx here. Maybe you traded an electric type from a friend to help you out. This is also shut down by Mud Slap. Any bug Pokemon you caught are at a disadvantage as well, so seeing as most wild Pokemon available to you at this moment in time are bug, grass, rock, or poison, your main viable options against Faulkner are normal types or Totodile, if you picked him. Or you can just brute force it, they're not that strong. And even then, Mud Slap also lowers accuracy, so your Pokemon could be whiffing attacks for turns before making any real headway. Playing this game after how many years, I give props to the devs for giving him this move. It's very clever. But despite his tricky moves, we managed to take down Faulkner and earn our first badge of the game, the Zephyr badge. And for what it's worth, he does give us the TM for Mud Slap to teach to our own Pokemon. With our first badge acquired, it's time to continue on to Azalea Town, to the south, where the next gym leader awaits. There is this path to the west of Violet City, but it's blocked by a weird moving dancing tree, so let's head south instead down along Route 32. On this route, there is a short detour to a place known as the Ruins of Alph, a whole archaeological site where researchers are studying ancient stone chambers covered in strange symbols. As we freely explore this place, there are mysterious slide tile puzzles on the walls that form images of ancient Pokemon, which I'm going to assume is how these civilizations had fun here. But we complete one, and the floor gives way as we drop down into a hidden tunnel filled with Pokemon we've never seen before. Unknown. These newly discovered alphabet-shaped Pokemon each represent a different letter, floating silently within the confines of the ruins. And though we can catch them, there seems to be more going on here, and the researchers are likely only scratching the surface on this mysterious ruin. We'll come back to this place later when we're better equipped, but for now, the ruins of Alph is definitely a location the game wants us to remember. And as we continue along Route 32, some guy tries to sell us a Slowpoke tail for $1 million Poké. I'm 11 years old and this sounds like a great idea, but I have no money.
Come back when you're a little...
Boy, just say so.
And because of this, our scammer friend here is pissed. And why are Slowpoke tails even on the market in the first place? This guy frames Slowpoke as a tasty dish. So people are actually chopping off their tails and eating them? Something isn't right here. But there's a Pokemon Center close by, and inside we meet the first fisherman guru of the game, who gives us an old rod so we can start fishing for certain Pokemon. And with that in mind, we battle fisherman trainers along the way while getting the number of Ralph over here to let us know when rare Pokemon start biting. Further south down this route is Union Cave, our cavernous path forward to Azalea Town. And inside are trainers that give us an opportunity to net some experience for our Pokemon, and of course wild Pokemon you expect to find in a cave like Zubat, Geodude, and Rattata, in case you didn't catch one yet. Union Cave does have a couple of secrets worth noting, though we can't access them without Surf. But later on, deeper sections loop back into new areas of the ruins of Alph. And if you happen to be down here on a Friday, there's a Lapras hanging out in the water deep in the cave. I assume humans managed to bring them back from near extinction in the last 3 years. But we push through Union Cave and arrive in Azalea Town. It's Ralph. Quillfish are biting. First of all, we just met, so I'm not calling you Uncle Ralph. That's a red flag right there. And second, why are you telling me to call my mom like you're my actual uncle? Wait a minute. Is this my uncle? So we backtrack all the way back through Union Cave to where our friend Ralph was to start fishing. This is a better example than any to prove that getting phone numbers can be useful to completing our Pokedex. And by using the old rod we just received, a Quillfish does indeed bite. This is a rare Pokemon in Generation 2 and a harsh reminder that catch rates can be very brutal in these games. Even with status effects in play, you'll burn through Pokeballs and money on things that have no business being this difficult to catch. Just look at its pissed off face as I throw Pokeball after Pokeball at it. And it's not just Quillfish, some Pokemon can actually flee from battle now. So there are times you won't be able to just battle it out until you catch them. I mean, I will admit it adds tension to rare encounters, but it's also infuriating when you've been hunting something specific and they keep running away. So on this Quillfish, I ran out of Pokeballs during this battle, so I defeated it and had to do the walk of shame all the way back to Violet Town to buy more balls. But on the way back, something magical happened. The mystery egg we've been carrying this whole time starts to hatch. Oh god, it's so adorable. It's Togepi! I finally have my own Togepi. After being teased in the anime for years, watching Misty carry this thing around, I finally get to own one. Anyway, we need to get that Quillfish. So once again, even with its health in the red and it being paralyzed, it took me 10 Pokeballs to finally catch this thing. So I gave it a fitting name. Come to find out years later that the status effects burn, poison, and paralysis are bugged in Gen 2. So while they're supposed to increase catch rates, it does nothing. So if you're watching this and have the urge to play this again, just stick to sleep and freeze to help you catch. This is the woes of a time where games didn't ship with day one patches. Finally, we reach Azalea Town, another small rural village tucked in the forest. This is a reference to the Wakayama prefecture of Japan's Kansai region, an area known for beautiful forests, mountainous terrain, and coastal views. And as we talked to folks in town, we discovered that it was once filled with Slowpoke, who have now seemed to have gone missing. I wonder if this has anything to do with some guy trying to sell me one of their tails for $1 million Poké. Well, the town's elder figure is a man named Kurt, a Pokeball craftsman who makes custom balls out of apricorns, these small fruits that grow on trees throughout Johto. We'll now be able to find them on trees during our travels to bring back to him. Bring him an apricorn and he'll turn it into a specialty Pokeball with unique properties. A white apricorn becomes a fast ball, good for catching Pokemon that try to flee. A black apricorn becomes a heavy ball for heavier Pokemon, etc. It's a cool little system that ties Pokeball creation to the natural world instead of just buying everything at the Pokemart. But it would have been even cooler if these balls worked as intended, as many of them are famously bugged or only work for very certain conditions that aren't well explained in game. For example, Fastball was supposed to help with that new wild Pokemon being able to flee thing, but due to a coding error, it only works on Magnemite, Tangela, and Grimer. The Love Ball was supposed to increase the catch rate of Pokemon of the opposite sex than the players, but instead it only helps with the same sex. Very progressive of you Pokemon. But this system would be the jump-off point for more unique Pokeballs available to trainers in future games. And it gives a fair bit of lore that apricorns served as the original basis to capture Pokemon. A much better explanation than some professor drugging Pokemon until they shrink down to the size of an apple. But old man Kurt here is too upset to create balls for us right now, as his granddaughter Slowpoke is also missing. He lets us know the remnants of Team Rocket are in the nearby Slowpoke well, cutting off their tails to sell them back for profit. In his rage, he decides to go give them a lesson in pain, that's directly from the game by the way, and runs off toward the well. I actually explored his house a bit, and it's interesting to see they put a picture of young Professor Oak on the wall. A cool shout out to his younger days that I still think we need an official game depicting. Anyway, we follow Kurt to the well, and here he is, folded after taking a tumble down the well. So now it's up to us. And we find his suspicions are correct. Even after 3 years of being disbanded, Team Rocket is back. Just here chopping off Slowpoke tails in this peaceful village. It's clear they've fallen pretty hard here. Generation 2 introduces the official Team Rocket theme, which has lived in my head rent-free for decades, but also in this game, they introduced female rocket grunts, which would go on to inspire the design for Cassidy in the anime, Jesse's rival. Deep in the well, we catch the Rockets in the act. I thought it was kind of sad to see one of the Slowpoke holding mail meant for Kurt's granddaughter from her dad, with it saying to look after the house with her grandpa and Slowpoke while sitting here in shock with no tail. They soften the blow here a little bit by explaining Slowpoke tails always grow back. Regardless, we clear out the Rocket grunts in the well, and the Slowpoke begin to return to town. The well itself has some interesting folklore too, with the legend being that 400 years ago, a severe drought was stopped when a Slowpoke's yawn brought in the long-awaited rain. A little bit of cute world building that explains why this town is filled with Slowpoke. So with Kurt now available to make Pokeballs for us, we have one piece of business left here, and that's facing the bug gym leader of Azalea, Bugsy. Bugsy looks suspiciously young to be running a gym, but the real threat here is his Scyther. This thing is fast, it hits hard, and it knows Fury Cutter, a move that doubles in power every consecutive hit. If you let Scyther get rolling with Fury Cutter, it snowballs fast, but at this point, my Hoot Hoot was pretty strong and pecked away at the bugs for pretty high damage. We earn the Hive Badge and press on west toward Ilex Forest. More distractions. It's our rival who seems surprised we took down Team Rocket and chooses to test our strength again. But he seems to be softening up to us a little bit, maybe? Though this is an easy battle, his team is off to an interesting start, with a Ghastly, his stolen Chikorita now evolved into a Bayleaf, and, a Zubat? So you're not just cave vermin. Again, he's not very challenging, but it's interesting to see what kind of team he's cooking up. But after our Totodile puts him to shame, it finally undergoes its first evolution. Oh no, he's ugly now. So Silva rattles on about becoming the strongest and stomping out the weak, Team Rocket, us, anyone beneath him. But I'd argue he actually feels like he's beneath us. This definitely isn't like our rival from the previous game. That was a childhood friend, a neighbor, and our equal at that time. This kid is clearly fighting through something that has nothing to do with us, and I'd argue he doesn't feel like a rival at all. But after he emotionally dumps on us, it's finally time to head into the Ilex Forest. This forest is a similar maze akin to the Viridian Forest in Generation 1, but there's something stopping you from leaving. This tree. So the player will need to help a charcoal maker's apprentice catch his Farfetch'd who ran away, which leads to this mini game of chasing it back toward the boy, who then in turn rewards you with Cut. Remember this HM? Now we can handle this tree. Deeper within the forest is a shrine dedicated to the Forest Guardian. We can examine the shrine, but it looks like nothing else can be done here just yet. But there is one last important thing that we should grab here, and that's the TM for the move Headbutt, from some man who's in the forest. Headbutt may be an attack you can teach your Pokemon, but in this game it serves a more important purpose, hitting trees until you find the Pokemon that you want. There are Pokemon you can only receive by bonking your Pokemon's head on a tree repeatedly, including Apom, Pineco, and one of Gen 2's poster children, Heracross. This thing was a nightmare to find, as I learned this time around how headbutting trees work. Like the first game, you have a unique trainer ID that's assigned to you, and all the Pokemon you catch have that number of authenticity on them as well. Even when you make a trade, that number will stick with them. This number was used to determine which Pokemon would be in which tree for your game when you headbutt it. So you could headbutt trees until you're blue in the face until you find the exact tree that has the right Pokemon. So unless you're using a calculator online to figure out where rarer Pokemon like Heracross would spawn, you'll be headbutting trees for days just trying to locate one. But it's time to move along because we still have more ground to cover before the next town. This is Route 34, one of the most important routes in the game for one reason. It's the home to the Pokemon Daycare! This is the old couple we heard about from Mr. Pokemon who gave him the Togepi egg from earlier. And as a friendly gesture, they'll leave another egg in our care. Now, daycares aren't new to Gen 2. There was one near Cerulean City in Red and Blue. You can drop a Pokemon off, it gains experience over time, and it's a good way to passively train a Pokemon you don't want to grind with. This time you can drop off 2 Pokemon. And if you've noticed during battle, this game now tells you whether every Pokemon is male or female. Leave a compatible male and female Pokemon with this old couple, and in their perverted ways, they will teach them the art of intimacy. Welcome to breeding. Every Pokemon belongs to a compatibility category that would later on be called egg groups. It's not very explicit here, but if 2 Pokemon share this category and are of opposite genders, you simply leave them at the daycare together, walk around for a certain amount of steps, come back, and the old man will tell you you are now responsible for a new Pokemon child. The egg will always hatch into the mother species at its lowest evolution. So if you breed a female Charizard with a compatible male, you're getting a Charmander. And the father can pass down moves to the offspring that it wouldn't normally learn on its own. These are called egg moves, and they opened up an entirely new dimension of strategy. You can now hatch a Pokemon with a custom moveset that no amount of leveling or TMs could replicate, and also influence their stats. For competitive players, this is everything, and a huge mechanic that is still an important part of Pokemon to this day. Oh, and let's not forget Ditto. This shape-shifting blob can breed with almost anything, regardless of gender, since it can almost perfectly copy any Pokemon, humans included by the way. But this makes it the single most valuable Pokemon for breeders. The game even has a hidden check to prevent you from breeding Pokemon that are too closely related. If their stats are too similar, that suggests that they're from the same family line. The daycare couple won't produce the egg. So Gen 2 quietly invented an incest prevention system for a Game Boy Color game. Despite all this, the depth of the breeding mechanic in general is incredibly impressive among all the other new features we've covered so far in Gen 2. It's insane how much was packaged in this one game. But we continue north toward our next major city, Goldenrod City. This is the largest city in the game, packed with several places of interest, but we'll save our tour for after our confrontation with its gym leader, Whitney. Remember how I said Brock served as a wake-up call for Gen 1? Whitney is that for Gen 2. At first, being the gym leader for normal types doesn't sound very intimidating, and she only faces us with 2 Pokemon. She starts with Clefairy, which has a bag of tricks like Metronome, Mimic, and Encore, moves that limit what your Pokemon can do or pulls random tricks out of a hat to trip you up. But all this is meant to soften you up for Whitney's star player, Miltank. This is a new cow Pokemon that will use one move to rule them all called Rollout. Rollout is actually a rock type move that gets stronger every consecutive turn, building more and more damage very quickly, and it can wipe your whole team if you're not prepared. The reason this Miltank is so famously lethal is because it has several different defensive tricks going for it. Pure normal types are actually pretty great picks to play defensively. Their only weakness is fighting type moves, and they're completely immune to ghost attacks. So unless you caught him a chop prior to this fight, or have a pretty strong fighting move at your disposal, you probably won't have a super effective answer here. And the tank part of Miltank's name is not for show. It has very high defense, so unless you have a very high level at this point, it's unlikely that you're taking it down in time to avoid that lethal force from rollout. Even if your Pokemon is capable of striking down Miltank, it can use the move Attract, which infatuates any male Pokemon on your team and gives them a chance to just stand there doing nothing while rollout keeps building up. So you're paralyzed by a crush while a cow rolls over your entire squad. That is Whitney. Thanks to tips from my stream, I had Croconaw use Fury Cutter from the very beginning of the battle, starting with Clefairy. Much like Rollout, this move builds damage over time, so by the time Miltank was sent out, the damage stacked and she was already fucked. And so, we're victorious over Whitney, who actually just throws a temper tantrum instead of handing over the badge. This trainer in her gym will have to let you know she's calmed down before she actually hands you the plain badge, and the TM for Attract. Johto has some sore losers, by the way. This isn't the last time this will happen in this game. But with that out of the way, we can finally explore Goldenrod stress-free. I remember the sheer scale of this city being breathtaking to me as a kid. Especially these railroad tracks and the massive radio tower, they just added a much deeper sense of depth and size than the big cities in Gen 1. Goldenrod, as I mentioned, is the biggest city in the game by a large margin, and you'll find yourself coming back here frequently because it's a hub for the rest of Johto. This is because Goldenrod is inspired by Osaka, the largest city in the Kansai region. Much like Goldenrod, Osaka is the commercial powerhouse of Western Japan, with several of its landmarks being included in the game. For instance, the Goldenrod radio tower heavily resembles the Sutenkaku radio tower, and Osaka is known for various department stores and serves as a major bullet train hub for inbound and outbound travelers from all parts of Japan. There's a high-speed train in Goldenrod as well called the Magnet Train, but we're not clear on where it goes and we can't board it just yet. So our first stop is the department store. This place is mainly an important location to pick up TMs for elemental punches. Ice Punch, Fire Punch, and Thunder Punch. These are going to be crucial for type coverage soon enough. I grabbed Ice Punch for Croconaut immediately. And the cool thing is that you can buy as many as you can afford. Typically, TMs can only be used once, but since they're available here at all times, you can stack up as you please. Goldenrod also has its own game corner. No crime syndicate hiding beneath it this time around. As usual, you can play slots, but Gen 2 introduces a new game called Card Flip. It's more or less like roulette. Place your bets on what card you think will pop up and win based on your bet. Get coins from these games and you once again can purchase rare Pokemon and TMs from the prize counter. There's also a bike shop here, fully moved from their Kanto location, and unlike the $1 million scam they were running last time, this one actually is giving bikes away for free under the condition that you ride it around and advertise their new shop for people. I guess that's fair. You'll also find around the city a couple of entrances to Goldenrod's underground tunnel, a place that has additional shops and most importantly the salon. You can give your Pokemon haircuts to increase their happiness, which sounds like a throwaway detail, but it's not. Happiness is a real stat now, and it's gonna matter. We'll get into that later when I'm pacing back and forth for an hour trying to make my Zubat like me. You'll know what I'm talking about. But while we're down here, the salon is a good place to talk about something Gen 2 elevated as well. Evolution methods. In Red and Blue, Pokemon evolved in 3 ways. You either level up, use an evolution stone, or trade. But now there are new ways to evolve, and different forms existing Pokemon can evolve into. You've got Pokemon that only evolve at certain times of day, Pokemon that evolve based on happiness, Pokemon that evolve when traded while holding a specific item, like Poliwhirl turning into Politoed with a King's Rock. And then there are the new stones. Gloom, for instance, typically evolves into Vileplume once you use a Leaf Stone on it. But as of Gen 2, using a Sunstone on Gloom will have it evolve into a completely different Pokemon, Blossom. So Vileplume and Blossom have different types of stat benefits and movesets, which gives you more options with the same species. I wonder if this was inspired from Tamagotchi now that I think about it, because this is right around that time that blew up as well. But that's not all. There are baby forms now. Favorites from Generation 1 like Jinx, Magmar, and Pikachu were given baby forms, Smoochum, Magby, and Pichu, exclusively obtainable through breeding, that new important mechanic I told you about. So Gen 2 expanded existing evolutionary lines in both directions, and this is woven pretty cleanly into the lore, with Professor Elm focusing his studies on different ways Pokemon evolve, while Professor Oak continues to discover new species of Pokemon. I always recall that uncanny feeling of seeing these Pokemon being teased in the anime, movies, and card games. It made it hard to replay any of the Gen 1 games while these rumors were circling around about new Pokemon, and it never really felt real to me until this game finally came out. Also in Goldenrod City is the family of Bill. Remember him? He runs the whole PC storage system you use to hold your excess Pokemon. Turns out this is his hometown, but currently he's not here, so I guess we'll bump into him sometime later. And last but not least on our tour is the radio tower. First thing we notice is a Team Rocket member is scoping the place out, but I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, right? The radio tower is Johto's broadcast hub that transmits across the entire region. Once you receive a radio card in here for your Pokegear, you can tune into different stations. There's a music channel, talk shows, a lottery, even Professor Oak has his own show. And this is where my nostalgia glasses worked against me, because I could have sworn there was much more substance to these radio shows. But even still, it allows you to play the music from your Pokegear as you travel around. And Professor Oak, for instance, will tell you where to find specific Pokemon on what routes. Why the hell would I need to know where a Rattata is, by the way? They're literally everywhere. Oak is a fraud. And the Pokegear itself is worth a moment because I think the idea of a device like this was ahead of its time. This is essentially a smartphone prototype. It's a clock, calendar, a map, a phone, and now a radio all in one device. This is around the time cell phones started to shrink down in size and were capable of doing more things, but this type of feature list, like GPS and radio capabilities especially, was likely pretty rare. Still, there's something funny about the naming Pokegear, a device that happens to have phone capabilities, which makes sense. But today we call our devices smartphones, phones that happen to do everything else. While I'd argue we spend less time using a phone as a phone these days. But anyway, it's interesting to see Game Freak must have saw where mobile technology was heading at the turn of the millennium and just built it into the game. Or maybe this was a really good guess. But beyond this gadget, the radio tower and magnet train station serves as a bigger purpose than just this visual flex. Look at where we are. We walk through Violet City, a town built around a pagoda where monks train with their Pokémon. Then we pass through Azalea Town, a quiet village at the edge of a forest with a shrine to a guardian spirit. And now we're standing in a city with a department store, an underground mall, a game corner, and a broadcasting tower that reaches every corner of the region. Johto is a region caught between two eras, between tradition and progress, literally side by side. And Game Freak mapped that tension directly into the geography of this game, because it mirrors exactly where the real world was at this point in time. Computers and the internet were now widely available to the public, cell phones as well. And I remember being a kid at this time, every news story explaining how the implementation of computers would allow us to make these huge discoveries and breakthroughs we never thought was possible. It was definitely a transitionary time where it felt advancement would never stall. I mean, we cloned a whole sheep named Dolly and announced it to the world in 1997. Game Freak had already written a story about genetic cloning gone wrong a year before that. Johto is cleverly demonstrating that expansion of the new onto this old world, and I wouldn't go as far to say that the two clash against each other in this game, but it's a very significant sign of the time and adds to that culture they tried to inject. So it's time for us to leave the big city as we continue north toward Ecruteak City, where our fourth gym is. But on our way through the checkpoint, we're given a quick errand. Someone needs a piece of mail delivered to a guy near Violet City, and since we're apparently the only reliable postal service in Johto, we decide to handle it. They give us a Spearow named Kenya with a letter attached to it. Mail is an actual item in this game, built on the feature of Pokemon being able to hold items. You can attach letters to Pokemon and then send them through trades to other real people, complete with different stationery you can purchase throughout the game. I wonder how many "you suck" letters were sent with this feature. You'll also occasionally see references to printing as well, which shows that the game was compatible with the Game Boy printer. A portable thermal printer that let you print out your Pokemon stats, your Pokédex entries, and unknown stamps. It was a $60 accessory that most of us never owned. We head north from Goldenrod and hit National Park, and I need to stop here for the music. This track is one of the greatest in this game and probably one of the most well done tracks in the series overall. If you listen to enough Pokemon mixes on YouTube, you'll definitely hear this one thrown in more often than not. The National Park itself is a nice area too. Some trainers will challenge you to battles, others are just chillin'. There's tall grass you can walk through for wild Pokemon, or you don't have to do that either. You can also just chill. This park is based on a real park north of Osaka known as the Expo Commemoration Park, the park that was previously the site of 1970's World Fair. But in-game, the most significant thing about this national park is the bug catching contest. Held on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, you can join a contest to catch the best bug Pokemon. A score tallied by various factors including the max HP of the Pokemon, a sum of its stats, and other hidden values with the max possible score being 386. The rules are that only one Pokemon on your team can help you battle and catch these bugs, and you're given 20 park balls to get the job done. If your Pokemon faints or you run out of balls, the contest is over, and you're only allowed to keep one bug Pokemon at a time. But this contest is an opportunity to catch rarer bugs like Scyther and Pinsir, which is more than likely the Pokemon you will need to win first place. And at the end of the contest, you get to keep your bug Pokemon you selected to be judged. The first place prize is a Sunstone, that special evolutionary stone that I spoke about earlier that can be used to evolve Gloom to Blossom, and a new grass Pokemon named Sunkern into Sunflora. This is a great replacement to the Safari Zone from Generation 1, with the rules being extremely fair and that whole bait Growstone mechanic being completely removed in place of actually battling Pokemon and considering the best options to keep. There's not much else to this contest, but it's a fun addition regardless for more activities happening throughout the week. To the east of here is Route 36 and 37, which will bring us to Ecruteak, But there is one last obstacle in our way, that dancing tree from earlier. This girl tells us that it's a Pokemon and it will only move if we use a squirt bottle on it, who her sister in Goldenrod City just happens to have. So after backtracking all the way to her sister's flower shop to get this squirt bottle, we spray our dancing cryptid and it reveals itself to be Sudowoodo, a rock-type Pokemon pretending to be a tree. So just like Snorlax in the first game, do not make this thing faint because you only have one opportunity to catch it. Shit! I mean, at least there were 2 Snorlax in the first game. Game Freak assumed you learned your lesson and only gave you one opportunity this time. With the road clear, we can now easily backtrack to Violet City and deliver that letter we were given. But on the way back, our egg finally hatches. It's Elekid, the baby form of Electabuzz, one of the new pre-evolutions Gen 2 introduced. And this little guy immediately earns a permanent spot on the team because an electric type was exactly what we needed to round out our squad. So after delivering that mail, Kenya has to say goodbye as well. But that frees us up to head on back to Ecruteak City. If Goldenrod is Osaka, Ecruteak is Kyoto, and the game wants you to feel the difference the moment you walk in. Everything about this place is older and quieter. And while there's a gym here, it doesn't look like the leader is present, so all we can really do is explore a bit more. One of my favorite set pieces here is this old theater. The headliners are the Kimono Girls, 5 women who are dressed in traditional Maiko Japanese attire, and are dancers, but they're also talented trainers. Each one has raised one of Eevee's evolutions, and you can battle them one by one for a special prize a gentleman will give you if you're successful. We encounter the evolutions that we met in Gen 1, Jolteon, Flareon, and Vaporeon, but Eevee now has 2 newly discovered evolutions. Espeon, a psychic type, and Umbreon, a dark type. Dark type?
What do you mean by that?
Wait a minute, that's new. Yes, so Espeon and Umbreon cleverly introduced several new mechanics all at once. If an Eevee has high happiness and is trained during the day, it will evolve into Espeon. Do this at night and you'll get Umbreon. And Umbreon is one of 5 dark-type Pokemon introduced in Gen 2, which felt like it was specifically brought in to help balance out psychic types. Dark-type moves are super effective against ghost types and psychic types, so it's worth getting your hands on some dark-type moves to fend off those pesky psychic types. But once we've defeated all the Kimono Girls, this kind gentleman, impressed with our skill, gives us the HM for Surf. How nice. But the real landmarks in Ecruteak are the towers, 2 of them standing on opposite sides of town. The Tin Tower to the northeast and the Burn Tower to the northwest. I'll continue calling this one the Tin Tower, but I learned this was a mistranslation. It would more accurately be called the Bell Tower. In Japanese, it's known as the Suzu Tower, and the word Suzu does actually translate directly to the word tin. But Suzu is also a word for a specific type of bell in Japan, so this is what they were referring to, and the localization team at that time must have missed it. We're not yet allowed to go to the Tin Tower, seeing as a badge from the gym leader is needed to enter, so we head to the Burn Tower instead and meet a new character you've seen. A man obsessed with tracking down a Pokemon of legend named Suicune, who is rumored to be in this very tower. And also here is that Solid Snake? Oh no, it's the gym leader, Morty, who's also helping with the search. As we venture through the tower's burned remains, we also find our rival has been roaming around here looking for legendary Pokemon, I guess to increase his power as a trainer, forcefully. So he challenges us to another battle with 4 Pokemon in his possession this time, Haunter, Magnemite, Bayleaf, and Zubat. Silver is not as hard as a skill check as our rival from Generation 1 to be honest, though I do love his selection of Pokemon. Which I guess by now you've probably noticed this time around I'm less invested in sharing my lineup. It's mainly because I couldn't really figure out who to stick with until much later in the game. There are 100 new Pokemon to choose from in Gen 2, and with additional moves and types, it's trickier to lock in a balanced team. So without much effort, we take Silver down, and he doesn't have much time to complain because we suddenly go careening down a hole in the floor. Silver mocks us for this when we could have 100% died from this fall. But on this basement floor, we discover 3 Pokemon are standing in the shadows, and the moment we approach them, they bolt. These are Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, the legendary beasts. Though before running off, it seems Suicune has taken a particular liking to us. All 3 scatter across Johto, and from this point on, they roam the map where you'll have to go search for them in random tall grass across the region. The worst part is they move around while you move around. It can be a pain in the ass to track down, but since we're playing the Crystal version, Suicune can be caught by continuing the story. It's the reason it's on the Crystal box in the first place, but let's not go legendary hunting just yet. Yusine meets us in the newly discovered basement, and because of us, he sets his eyes on Suicune for the first time. after 10 years of searching, and then vows to track him down. But once we exit the tower, an old man clues us in on the bigger story here. The 3 Pokemon we just saw once perished in the fire that destroyed this tower. But another legendary rainbow-colored Pokemon that is said to roost at the Tin Tower descended from the sky and resurrected the 3 Pokemon into more powerful beings. It's implied that they were once totally different nameless Pokemon, and after their deaths they were reborn into something entirely new. It's as if the mythology in the game is telling you what's gone is gone, and what rises from the ashes will always be something new. But let me get through the rest of the game so you guys understand why I'm cooking here. Ecruteak's 2 towers are based on 2 temples in Kyoto, Toji and Saiji. These temples were on opposite sides of the main gate of early Kyoto. Toji, meaning East Temple, originates back to 796 Common Era, and had this 5-storied pagoda that would be destroyed and rebuilt 4 times before it became the structure it is today. While Saiji, the West Temple, burnt down in 1233 and was never rebuilt. Unfortunately, no legendary Pokemon to be found here, but all that remains of it now is this marker. So it's not hard to see what inspired the Tin and Burn Tower in this case. But additionally, many believe that Tin Tower was based on another Buddhist temple in Kyoto, Kinkakuji, the Golden Pavilion, a very popular tourist location too. This temple is covered in gold leaf, and at the top of it is a golden phoenix, known in Japanese as Ho-Oh. I wonder if this has any connection to that rainbow Pokemon that descended from the skies. But we're now ready to face Morty, the ghost-type gym leader of Ecruteak, which is fitting to its older culture. But his gym here is wild. It's built over a dark pit with this invisible floor, so one wrong step and you're back to the entrance. How it works isn't explained, but then again, this is a world with teleportation panels and gyms as well, so let's assume that's what's sitting at the bottom of this pit. And there's no way around it, you'll be fighting all these trainers along the way. But Morty himself can be a tricky fight. His team is mostly Ghost, Poison, Dual types, since there still aren't many Ghost types available in this game, so yes, we're talking Ghastly, 2 Haunters, and his star player Gengar, who knows a brand new Ghost move introduced, Shadow Ball. But we get through with our team and are awarded the Fog Badge. 4 badges down, 4 to go. So we're halfway through the Johto Gym Challenge, and I think this is a good place to take a step back, because everything we've seen so far didn't come easy. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the success of Pokemon Red and Green put massive pressure on Game Freak to deliver more gold. And by 1997, development was already well underway for Pocket Monsters 2, Gold and Silver. Names selected to reflect the ultimate Pokemon game. This was still before Pokemon even made it to the West, with their sequel title intending to be another original Game Boy title, much like its predecessor with a planned 1998 release date for Japan. Stepping up to direct once again was Game Freak's founder and Pokemon creator Satoshi Tajiri, with his partner in crime Ken Sugimori serving once again as the lead artist. Music composer Junichi Masuda would return to compose the soundtrack, but this time would work alongside Tajiri as a designer for the game. Grand new ideas were drafted early in development, like the real-time clock system, adding new evolutions of old Pokemon, and of course bringing in 100 new Pokemon into the game, some that were teased out in Pokemon the first movie. In the meantime, Nintendo was filling in the gaps with multiple rapid-fire spin-offs during this time, like the N64 Classics Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Snap, while working alongside Game Freak to get the original games ready for Western localization. And on the merchandising side, Tsunekazu Ishihara of Creatures Inc. stepped up to handle licensing deals which boosted Pokemon to the next level, namely through its official trading card game that became another huge success. So by November of 1997, Game Freak already had a working demo for Gold and Silver that was showcased at Nintendo Space World. Very little was known about this version of the game, with some surviving photographs taken. But thanks to some hero, the files for the demos were posted online anonymously in 2018, shedding incredible light on the development story for Generation 2. And you can immediately see this was a very different game. The demo begins with the protagonist in the starting town known as Silent Hill, no relation to the survival horror series of the same name, which this demo predates by 2 years. But it's likely a reference to the name Shizuoka, a direct translation of the city in Japan Newbark Town may be based on. In the demo, one of the 3 starter Pokemon is randomly chosen, but something isn't right here. Chikorita is still here instead with the name Happa, but Cyndaquil and Totodile don't seem to exist yet. Instead we have Honoguma, a fire bear, and Kurusu, some type of water dinosaur thing. Then the player can move around a specific route and are given 5 Pokeballs to catch a limited set of available Pokemon along that route. During this little demo, the player will battle a few trainers before encountering their rival at the end of the route, and the demo ends. And though this build seems to have just been made for players at the expo to explore a bit, catch some Pokemon, and fight new trainers, the files itself reveal a lot of information about development of the game at this moment in time. In fact, this build contains 100 brand new Pokemon, many of which are prototypes of what we got in the final product, and many unused ones like Honoguma and Kurisu here. In the files, you can see all 3 starters had full sprite work for their evolutionary lines, which still feels very weird to look at, like I'm peering into another dimension. Honoguma would have become Dynabear, and Kurisu, Aquaria. And if you haven't seen these sprites before, I'd go check them out for yourself, because there's some interesting ideas here, like look at this Nightmare Bellsprout evolution, or Monja, a baby form of Tangela that was also scrapped. Interestingly enough, an evolved form of Tangela was included called Jaranra, an idea that was scrapped until we finally got Tangrowth in Generation 4. But the most interesting info in this demo is the intended map of Johto. While the player can only access Silent Hill and its adjacent route in the confines of the demo, beyond your rival is the gate to Old City, a scrap town that seems to combine elements of Violet City and Ecruteak City from the final game, with emphasis on old Japanese architecture. But with access to the raw files, internet archaeologists were able to peer behind the curtain to get a look at this town. And once you glance at the town map for Johto, you get a much better understanding of the sheer scale Game Freak was going for. Johto's map was originally the entire island of Japan, with each major region corresponding to a city on the game's map. And if you apply debug mode to the demo build, you can see the original planned architecture of old towns, coastal cities, and even a pyramid-style structure for the ruins of Alph. And as you walk around, you get a glance at planned set pieces, including what seems to be an imposter Professor Oak for whatever reason, and Kanto seems to be intended to be a large city within Johto's map. It's said that at this stage, the game was around 80% completed, which is hard to grasp looking at this demo, but of course this is just a demo and probably doesn't reflect everything that was completed at that time. This version of the game has fascinated fans so much that there are ROM hacks like Pokémon Gold and Silver 97 Reforged, which reimagine Game Freak's original ideas into a fully playable game. I haven't touched this one yet, but it definitely has piqued my interest. Also, might I add that this guy's excitement over finding a new Pokemon at Nintendo Space World playing this demo is just so wholesome. But as you all can imagine from the scale of the game I just described, there were significant delays in development, and no news until March 1998, where it was officially announced the game would be delayed. And later that year, the floodgates had opened for Pokemon for the rest of the world, and it became a global sensation very quickly, which I'm sure made Game Freak sweat even more. There was an Iwata Asks segment for Gold and Silver's remakes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver versions, where longtime programmer and director at Game Freak, Shigeki Morimoto, talks more about the difficulties during development, saying, quote, "Actually at that time we had very few programmers. That wasn't just the case for Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver, but for Red and Green as well. There were only about 4 programmers. What's more, though we were creating games with a very small team, we were very greedy in terms of all the features we wanted to include in the games. I think that may be why they experienced such a difficult birth." End quote. Because of this, there would be almost a year of no news on the highly anticipated sequel, until finally a new release date of June 1999 was selected, and it would be announced that the title would be for Nintendo's soon-to-be-released handheld console, the Game Boy Color. This allowed them to apply more detail to the game's environments and improve the overall Pokemon sprites now that they had more colors and technical power on their side. So by the time the 1999 Nintendo Space World Expo came around, the demo provided was much more in line with the final Gold and Silver product we received. It's apparent that Game Freak did a huge overhaul of what they had before, with the Johto region condensed down to reflect a majority of the Kansai region of Japan instead, which I think was a great decision on their part as it allowed for much more dense and detailed maps, versus spreading themselves thin across the entire island. And after another brief delay, Pocket Monsters Gold and Silver was released to Japan in November of 1999. And as you can imagine, the merchandise machine continued to press on, with the Pocket Pikachu Color being released alongside the game. This is basically a Pikachu Tamagotchi, and its original version hit the market in 1998, named the Pokemon Pikachu in North America. A device where you could carry around Pikachu as a glorified pedometer. The more steps you get, the more watts you obtain to buy Pikachu presents, but its follow-up device, the Pocket Pikachu Color, or Pokemon Pikachu 2, was designed around Gold and Silver's releases, now with more Pikachu animations and a colored screen, and had an infrared port that could connect with the Game Boy Color so players could use their watts for items that could be sent directly into your game. Pocket Monsters Gold and Silver was received with glowing praise, with many critics agreeing that the added gameplay elements and overall design was an incredible leap forward. On its first day in Japan, the game sold over 1.4 million copies and would go on to be the 4th best-selling game in the series. Then it would hit the North American market in October of 2000. And of course, to follow up the sequels, the anime would continue Ash's journey into the Johto region for that sweet, sweet marketing. And the trading card game would expand its roster with all the new Pokemon introduced. Now, there's this rumor that has gone around for a long time that Pokemon Gold and Silver were intended to be the final games in the series. One of those things you hear and don't question at face value, especially with the amount of content packed in this game and the overall plot. This was also Satoshi Tajiri's final game serving as director before he fully handed over the reins to Junichi Masuda, who would direct future Pokemon titles. So considering all of that, Gold and Silver does feel like a bookend to something, the conclusion to the genesis of Pokemon, but it was never officially planned to be the end of the series. And it seems this rumor started with many misinterpreting a quote from Tsunekazu Ishihara from that same Iwata Ask segment. It's crazy how this was blatantly said in the official Nintendo UK magazine back in the day. Ishihara was a producer for the game and was running its massive licensing sector at the time. So he said, quote, "The reason that I licensed so many products and developed things like the trading cards was basically to ensure that Pokemon Gold and Silver were successful. I felt that this was my primary role, so at that time, I worked with the assumption that after we put out Pokemon Gold and Silver, my work as far as Pokemon was concerned would be done. I didn't intend to make any more Pokemon titles. I even thought that once we entered the 21st century, it'd be time for me to do something else entirely. And it didn't turn out to be the finish line. Once you'd released Pokemon Gold and Silver and it was selling faster than even Red and Green, I couldn't very well get off the ride halfway through saying, 'Nice work everyone, good luck from here on in.' Product proposals flooded in from overseas, things gradually got out of hand, until I thought that approving this volume of products simply wasn't a job that a single person could cope with." End quote. So it seems Ishihara's intention to initially move on from Pokemon on a personal level turned into the famous internet rumor that the series was planned to end at Gen 2, though there's no basis for this outside of these quotes. So thank you to Did You Know Gaming for following that rabbit hole on this one. But Ishihara's influx of product proposals forced him to draw a line in the sand, and he provided a list of things Pokemon would need for it to continue. First, the animated series would need to keep going, and have a movie tied to it every year while following along with the games being developed. Ishihara also proposed that an organization would need to be established to properly manage the intellectual property, and so the Pokemon Company was born. Originally known as the Pokemon Center Company Limited, this is a joint venture company owned by Nintendo, Creatures, and Game Freak to neatly consolidate the Pokemon brand and oversee licensing, with Ishihara serving as its president and CEO to this day. So if you feel a complete vibe shift from Gen 2 to Gen 3, I'd argue much of it is from Pokemon transforming from a passion project into something much more corporate. There was always a change in that aura I've been trying to put into words over the years, but maybe I'll inspect that in further detail in an eventual Gen 3 video. But finally we return to our protagonist, who has run off toward the next town without us for some reason. Shame on you. Route 38 and 39 lead us west of Ecruteak toward Olivine City, though you have some freedom here to explore other paths surrounding Ecruteak, as the next 3 gym leaders can be taken on in any order. But for the sake of taking the smoothest route, I opted to head west. Not much happening on Route 38 and 39, just a ton of trainer battles, but there is an area of interest here known as Mumu Farm, home of a farmer family and one sick Miltank.
I'm a slut.
If you feed the Miltank enough berries, it will become healthy again, and you can then purchase milk here, a more effective healing alternative to potions. But we travel a little further ahead to Olivine City, a coastal town complete with a dock for ships, and the major area of interest here, the Olivine Lighthouse. Olivine is likely to be based around the Japanese city of Kobe, one of Japan's earliest trading cities for foreign goods. Even the sign at the entrance of the city supports this, with Olivine being known as the port closest to foreign lands. Internationally, Kobe is known for their Kobe beef, generally known as Wagyu beef. And I bring this up because that would explain why this Mumu farm is here just north of the town. Don't let the cute name fool you. They murder Tauros and Miltank here to globally ship out their specialty marbled cuts. I'd really love to get into the very glossed over meat eating habits in the Pokemon world at some point. These sausages and pre-cooked burger meat you add to your curry and Sword and Shield have to come from somewhere, just saying. But as we approach the Olivine gym, Silver barges out and tells us we shouldn't panic because he doesn't bother with wimps like us. Did we not just battle 2 seconds ago? I don't get it. but he tells us the gym leader isn't here and is taking care of a sick Pokemon at the town's lighthouse. So that gives us some time to explore a bit. We find the town's inhabitants are comprised of fishermen and sailors, like this one chilling at this cafe that randomly gives us HM4 for strength. Our Pokemon can now push boulders around, that's cool. There's also a dock you can check out here, but it's empty for now, but you can always do some fishing here if you'd like. So we check out the Olivine Lighthouse, a lighthouse built in honor of the Pokemon of past times who used to light the way at the coast for incoming sailors. And you'd think a building with such a wholesome purpose wouldn't turn out to be a treacherous dungeon filled with sailors who want to battle, and broken pathways where you have to jump down holes to find the right staircase that leads up. That's all here. Apparently the lighthouse doubles as a training ground for trainers, so we use it for much needed experience. But finally we reach the top and meet Olivine's gym leader, Jasmine. She expresses to us a deep concern for the sick Ampharos that lives here, who helps light the lighthouse. It's unable to breathe, and she pleads with us to travel to the next town over, Cianwood, to obtain medicine from their pharmacy. It looks like our battle will have to wait for now. The path to Cianwood takes us through Route 40 and 41, which is all water. There are a bunch of swimmer trainers and higher level Tentacruel in these waters, making it an excellent place to level up your Pokemon along the way. And once our Croconaw reaches level 30, he undergoes his final evolution into Feraligatr. Hell yeah. On this route is also a dungeon known as the Whirl Islands, but we still can't access it due to these whirlpools blocking the way. So we press on to the sandy beach side of Cianwood. This is one of the smaller towns in Gen 2, but there are a couple notable locations like the Photo Studio, a place that once again incorporates that Game Boy printer, allowing players to print out their current Pokédex or any mail they received. There's also a house here with a guy who claims our rivals stole a Pokemon from him. I guess we'll see on our next meeting then. But as mentioned by Jasmine, this city also has the Cianwood City Pharmacy, an establishment that's been in operation for 500 years, and the spot where we need to get that special medicine. If we head a little north, there is a Crystal version exclusive cutscene where we run into Suicune again, who then runs off, but Ucine is not too far behind, and he's all like, "How cool, I thought I just saw Suicune. Okay, let's battle." This character is a little tacked on for the most part, so if you're playing Crystal version just for this little side plot, it's not worth it. Either way, this little trip to Cianwood is convenient for us because another gym leader is here in this town, the fighting type leader, Chuck. Chuck seems to be a little bit of an ass though, because before the battle begins, he tries to intimidate us by tossing a boulder. Like bro, it's a Pokemon battle, none of that matters here. Chuck only has 2 Pokemon to take down, Primeape and Poliwrath, and considering they're weak to flying or psychic types, there are many options available at this time to make quick work of them. But for Poliwrath, who is a water fighting type, this was a perfect opportunity for our new Elekid to strut his stuff with a powerful Thunder Punch. And with his defeat, Chuck awards us with the Storm Badge, but it's his wife who gives us an even more useful gift for winning, HM2 Fly. We can now easily backtrack to previously visited towns and dungeons. So with medicine in hand, we head back to the lighthouse to save Amphi, who immediately starts feeling better. And with it saved, Jasmine now has a clear head to take us on in a gym battle. When we get to the gym, our hype man tells us Jasmine is the gym leader for the newly discovered Steel type, and that he doesn't know much about it. Well, fuck you too.
Damn!
But Jasmine is one of the more tolerable gym leaders in this game, as she proves she has her priorities right by saving that Ampharos, and also doesn't need an entourage in her gym. She runs this shit solo. And after she thanks us again, the battle begins. As our hype man mentions, Jasmine is the master of Steel types, the second new Pokemon type introduced in Gen 2. On her squad are 2 level 30 Magnemites and Steelix, the new evolved form of Onix. And though Magnemite were introduced in Gen 1, they were only electric types in the original games, and have now been updated to electric steel dual types, which in my opinion makes them much more interesting to include on a team than before. Steel types are weak to fighting, ground, and fire moves, but resist a ridiculous number of types, including normal, grass, ice, flying, rock, bug, psychic, dragon.
Alright, I get it!
And Steelix especially can be a nightmare because its defense stat is absurd. Though there are only 2 new types, the addition of Dark and Steel flipped what you knew from Gen 1 on its head. That booklet you memorized from the old manual doesn't work anymore here. There are new rules in town. And it was cool to know that the fundamentals of how you played Pokemon were always transitioning, and this would definitely not be the last time it happens. But with Steelix being a steel ground type, it's still vulnerable to water. So a couple surfs from Feraligatr did the trick. Well played, Jasmine, but I must become the champion. Upon winning, she gives us the Mineral Badge, which makes this our 6th badge collected. But at this moment in my playthrough, I realized that my team was starting to fall behind, and I didn't have the best type coverage, so it was time to make some decisions on my permanent keepers. Fraligator and Elekid were definite keeps, but I bit the bullet and placed the Vileplume and Noctowl I had in my team in the box, and replaced them with an Abra for psychic coverage and Zubat? Hear me out, because Zubat had quite the glow up between generations. This game introduced a third evolution for Zubat beyond his tongue-crazy Golbat form here, and that was Crobat. But just leveling up won't grant you this evolution. You have to make Zubat happy. Very happy. This brings me back to the newly introduced happiness mechanic. Technically, this got its start in Pokemon Yellow version with a friendship mechanic you had with Pikachu, but now every Pokemon can be fully befriended. Hidden points that are awarded every time a Pokemon levels up, gets a haircut, or is the first one in your party as you walk around. There are more ways to get happiness points, like teaching them new moves, but most of the time you're getting a small amount of points for each of these events. 220 happiness points are needed for a Golbat to evolve into a Crobat, so you'll either spend a ton of time leveling it up, going for a haircut, which can only be done once per day by the way, or just cranking that emulator into turbo mode and running back and forth with Zubat in the lead to speed that shit up. I did this, and even though it took a bit of time to make Zubat and I the best of friends, it was totally worth it because once our relationship clicked for us, and after some leveling up, I was rewarded with one of the fastest Pokemon available to me in this generation. And being a poison flying type, I had great type coverage against pesky fighting, grass, and ground types. Such a great idea to revive interest in a Pokemon that was generally annoying in the first game. As for the Abra on my team, after grinding it up to Kadabra, I still needed to trade it to evolve it to a proper Alakazam, and who better than to trade it to than myself. Pokemon Gold and Silver didn't leave out the kids who were still playing Red, Blue, and Yellow on their old Game Boys, with the introduction of the Time Capsule, a machine on the second floor of every Pokemon Center that allowed you to still trade with players that had the previous games. You couldn't go near this thing with any of the new Pokemon or moves introduced in Gen 2 for obvious reasons, but it made it simple for me to trade Kadabra to Mentok from the past over here, and then trade back my fully evolved Alakazam. Not to mention Alakazam is another extremely fast Pokemon. And then finally there was Rocky, the Onix traded to me that was initially supposed to be a placeholder. Seeing Jasmine's Steelix made me want one of my own, but this is another evolution that doesn't come easy. You need the rare item Metal Coat, acquired much later in the game, and then you'll need to trade Onix while he's holding this item. I couldn't wait, so I did some hackery to get a Metal Coat into my inventory much earlier.
You were just making it look like you were playing. You're a phony!
Anyway, welcome to the team Steelix. And just one glance at his defense stat, you'll realize why he's such a boon to any team in this game. Oh, did you know Pokemon can catch syphilis?
What?
Okay, not really, but this game subtly introduces something I guarantee many of us never encountered at that time, a viral infection known as Pokerus. While it sounds worrisome, this is a virus that benefits Pokemon by doubling the effort values or EVs they gain from battling. Hidden values that determine stat boost your Pokemon earn based on what they fight. For example, beat a fast Pokemon and your Pokemon's speed will potentially boost more on the next level up. So if your Pokemon is infected with Pokerus, this all happens twice as fast. You can even have it infect other Pokemon in your party. So why not just spread it to everyone? Well, the odds of a wild Pokemon having Pokerus is approximately 1 in 21,845, making this extremely rare. But if you do have a Pokemon that contracts it, the Pokemon Center will let you know there are tiny life forms on your Pokemon. Professor Elm will then call you and congratulate you on your Pokemon catching the clap. Unfortunately, your Pokemon will be naturally cured over time, so the window to infect others is limited, but the effect of boosting their EVs remains even after they've recovered, making this a highly sought out effect within Pokemon games. So with all that housekeeping out of the way, I decided to make one last pit stop because my curiosity was getting the better of me. So I flew back to the ruins of Alph to finally get to the bottom of this place, and after completing more sliding puzzles on the wall, the floors give way again and we're dropped into more chambers filled with unknown. Catch 3 different forms and a researcher will upgrade your Pokedex with Unknown Mode, essentially a tracker for all 26 alphabet-shaped forms. And if you're playing Crystal, there are even riddles carved into the walls that require you to use items like water stones or escape ropes to open up hidden chambers with rare items. There's also chambers that have messages on the floor written in unknown shapes that describe a civilization that once lived alongside Unknown. They possess great insight and refuse the outside world. We humans must learn to walk in harmony with them. We depart for their sakes. So it seems that they were getting along with this group until they had to just kinda spirit away from them after a while. Or it's implied that they phase between dimensions. This is actually given more color in Pokemon Movie 3. But for the sake of this game, here's the thing. The Ruins of Alph feels like it should be building towards something bigger, and it just doesn't. If you tune your Pokégear radio to a specific frequency while walking around the ruins, you'll pick up this bizarre, unsettling signal that sounds like nothing else in the game. This creeped people out. And I think this, alongside the puzzles, made people feel like they were missing something. This fueled years of fan speculation that there had to be some deeper secret hidden here, but there isn't. There's no legendary encounter or additional storyline, just more unknown. Even if you talk to NPCs in Ecruteak, they seem to hint that there is a larger narrative forming here. Of the legendary Pokemon, Suicune is said to be the closest to Ho-Oh. I hear there may also be a link to Pokemon known as Unknown. The Pokemon Unknown must be sharing a cooperative bond with Suicune, but nothing comes out of this. It's one of the more frustrating loose ends in Gen 2 because all the ingredients for something cool are here, and I can't even tell you how I'd want this to finish, but whatever that thing is, the game never pulls the trigger on it. But even though it took a decade, we finally got the payoff we were looking for in the remakes Heart Gold and Soul Silver. By incorporating new lore from Gen 4 to build a connective narrative involving Unknown and Arceus, the ultimate Pokemon god. But maybe we'll get there someday. This video is getting long enough. A couple of theories about this place is rooted in that old beta map from the 1997 build of Johto, with the ruins originally located on the island roughly where Hiroshima is in Japan, which led some fans to believe Unknown were a depiction of lost souls in the war. But it's more likely a reference to kofuns, ancient Japanese tombs from older civilizations, with some that can be found in the Asuka region of Japan, where the Ruins of Alph sits on the map. With my curiosity sated, let's get back to our adventure. We travel east of Ecruteak along Route 42, where there's a cave called Mount Mortar. The massive multi-floor dungeon. Later you can traverse deeper inside, where we see the Karate King from the first game, who will give you a Tyrogue if you defeat him. A baby fighting type with one of the more unique evolution gimmicks in Gen 2. It can evolve into Hitmonlee if its attack is higher than defense, Hitmonchan if defense is higher, and a brand new Pokemon, Hitmontop, if the two stats are equal. Another example of Gen 2 taking existing evolutionary lines and branching them in new directions. But we press on to Mahogany Town, a small village where we learn ninjas once resided, a reference to the city of Koka in Japan, known to be the origin of ninja arts during the Sengoku period. But something here feels off. It's a small, quiet town, but there's this shop near the entrance that just doesn't sit right with me. We can't challenge the gym yet either, so the game nudges us north toward the Lake of Rage. This is the largest lake in the region and can be associated with Japan's largest body of fresh water, Lake Biwa. And this is one of the most memorable moments in Generation 2. You get to this lake, and in the center is a red Gyarados, just sitting in the water. But why is it red? What's happening in this town? Red Gyarados is the prime example of shiny Pokemon, also new to Gen 2. Rare alternate color variants that any Pokemon can have. A mechanic still around to this day which bred the popular pastime of shiny hunting. The catch is that you have a 1 in 8,192 chance of encountering one. They've made the odds more likely in more recent games, so all shinies are not built the same. If you caught one in Gen 2 through 5, you're a true trainer. But this Gyarados isn't rare luck. This one was made. As you talk to the locals, you piece together what's happening. Team Rocket has set up an operation nearby, and they're broadcasting a radio signal that's forcing Magikarp to evolve against their will so they can sell Gyarados for profit. That's what created this Gyarados. Its color implied to not fully be changed from its Magikarp form due to that rushed evolution. And there's something worth thinking about here. Gen 1 introduced the idea of a group of people using and abusing Pokemon for nefarious deeds. And all this time, these games have celebrated evolution, especially with the discovery of all these new methods to evolve Pokemon. Pokemon that evolve through happiness and friendship and time of day, but this is a dark mirror of all of that. Forced evolution. This is a really interesting concept, and you almost feel bad for this Gyarados, so let's reward it with a lifetime of captivity.
Oh shit!
Welcome to the team, Gyarados. But after we catch it, we meet a familiar face at the lake shore, Lance, the former champion of the Indigo Plateau that we faced in the first game. And we find out he's undercover, investigating Team Rocket's little operation. This is a cool recontextualization of his character from Gen 1, as these powerful trainers actually go out and help Pokemon in the world rather than just sit on a throne all day. Lance's style of involvement here becomes more commonplace in future titles, with gym leaders and Elite Four members having much more screen time getting involved with more serious affairs in the world. Lance leads us back to Mahogany Town in that suspicious shop, because underneath it is a full Team Rocket hideout, and the source of the signal forcing Pokemon to evolve. But inside, it's the usual though. Grunts to battle and surface level puzzles to figure out. We also meet a handful of Rocket executives running this operation, and honestly it feels like just a mess. Half the time I wasn't sure which one is actually in charge or even which one was speaking, which unintentionally leans into the idea that there's no clear chain of command here. Giovanni ran a tight ship 3 years ago, and these people are scrambling with shitty plans. It just adds to this picture of an organization that lost its head and never recovered. We do run into Silver here as well, who insists on destroying Team Rocket and shyly admits to us that Lance crushed him in a battle. But he also lectured him on not using his Pokemon for power, but loving them instead. Silver ponders on this in his own special way before shoving us and running off. I think we're besties now. But fighting alongside Lance gives this section a different energy. We're not doing this alone for once. And together we shut down the signal generator and dismantle the operation while wiping out the Rockets. There's actually an amazing depiction of this from the Pokemon Generations animations launched on YouTube years back. I recommend giving that a watch. But the signal stops and Mahogany Town can breathe again. We can now face the town's gym leader, Price, who didn't help for shit, by the way, I'll remember that. His team isn't particularly memorable to me either, but he has a Seal, Dugong, and new to Gen 2, Piloswine, an ice ground type. But our team is so decked out at this point, it was just a matter of picking how we want to destroy Price.
Damn!
And so we received the Glacier Badge. We're so close to glory. Until we get a concerning call from Professor Elm. Turns out we haven't fully eradicated Team Rocket, as they suddenly launched a desperate takeover of the radio tower in Goldenrod. Tune into the radio and there's a pretty pathetic broadcast of them begging Giovanni to return. Now, this could be a reach, but since I compared the Rockets to the Yakuza in Gen 1, with their ties to game centers and attempts at corporate takeover, Gen 2's disorganized Team Rocket seems to map well to the post-Yakuza era in Japan. In 1992, a major crackdown on the Yakuza occurred with the Anti-Boryokudan law that passed that year. A law that made it much easier for authorities to crack down on gang offices, properties, and high-ranking members, which gutted most Yakuza groups. This caused the Yakuza membership to drop by 70%, vastly tearing apart their influence. And this would lead to many displaced former Yakuza members losing their corporate influence and resorting to more petty crimes or running drug and prostitution rings instead. And by the time Gold and Silver came out in 1999, the effects of these laws would have been very apparent, and we can see that reflected in Team Rocket here. Their old leader disbands the group and the remnants are here chopping off Slowpoke tails or forcing Pokemon to evolve to sell them for profit. We stop all of that, and all they can do now is send out a broadcast begging for their leader to come back. He doesn't, by the way. Giovanni totally ignores this. He's not in this game whatsoever. So with that in mind, we head to Goldenrod to put an end to this and storm the tower. Props to this set piece, by the way. It really feels like Team Rocket is throwing everything they have at you here. The tower is filled with grunts and the executives we met earlier. And again, it's difficult to tell the difference between them. Though they have one female executive in their ranks, she's the most distinct. In the remakes, they would give these executives names and distinct designs, which made me realize there were 4 different executives speaking to me throughout the course of this game. So as we ascend the tower, we learn the station manager was taken hostage somewhere in the Goldenrod underground. And when we head there to save him, another frustrating puzzle awaits us. You have to press these levers in a certain pattern to unlock the way here, but it's easier said than done. You also have another run-in with Silver here, who still expresses his hatred for Team Rocket, but also is still recovering from that bad loss from Lance, thinking about his words about love of Pokemon. He did steal that Pokemon, by the way, it's Sneasel. But after this battle, he has some thinking to do. This was also pretty bad timing, considering we're trying to save a hostage right now. But once we rescue the manager, he gives us the key to access the top of the radio tower, where we mop the floor with the Rocket executives, who then fully disband Team Rocket in a rather anticlimactic way, but I'd argue that feeling is the point. It's sad. These are just people with no purpose chasing a dead dream. Clearly, the world is changing. With the day saved, the station manager will tell us that there used to be another bell tower where the radio tower is now, often visited by that rainbow bird Pokemon we've been hearing about. When the old bell tower was torn down, the manager found an item that he kept that he'll now give us. And this will change depending on the version that you're playing. We'll receive the rainbow wing for the gold version, silver wing for the silver version, and in this case, the clear bell for a crystal version. These items are necessary to obtain the legendary Pokemon that's on your game's box, so in our case, it's Suicune. Still, I wish we could get more light shed on the tower that used to exist here and its significance. This is something that wasn't fully addressed in the remakes either. So with Team Rocket packed up, we fly back to Mahogany Town and continue east. There's an ice-filled cave here called Ice Path that felt pretty relaxing to get through considering the huge crime syndicate arc we just went through. I was just proud of myself for remembering how to navigate these sliding ice puzzles after all these years. But on the other side of the cave is our final town of Johto, Blackthorn City, home of the gym leader Clair, the dragon specialist. But we don't waste much time here and go right to the gym, which Clair put straight up lava in. This is a multi-floor puzzle that requires you to push boulders down to the first floor so you can walk across the lava to reach Clair, making it one of the more annoying gyms to complete. But once we confront Clair, she boasts that she's in league with the Elite Four. Alright, just put the fries in the bag, bro. Clair is stacked with 4 Dragon-type Pokemon, which still has a very lacking roster in Gen 2, so that means she has 3 Dragonairs and a Kingdra, a newly introduced evolution for Seadra from Gen 1. I think this is a cool upgrade for Seadra, transforming it to a water dragon type. Dragon types are only weak to other dragon types and ice, and resist fire, water, grass, and electric. So introducing Kingdra here cleverly removes the super effectiveness of grass and electric due to its dragon typing, and its water typing removes the super effectiveness of ice, leaving it only weak to dragon types in this game. Even if you did use dragon moves, there are only 3 available in the whole game, and they're still not the greatest. Though again, our team is very capable by this time with our Elekid, who's all grown up into an Electabuzz, handling this easily. So we defeat Clair and it's time to get our badge, only she refuses to give this to us. Yeah, this is like Whitney, but worse. Clair is obnoxious and insists we're not ready for the Pokemon League, then tasks us to take a challenge in a place behind the gym called the Dragon's Den. And this is such a strange side quest to me, but let's call it more world building. In Gold and Silver versions, you just surf through this cave past this dragon shrine to get the Dragon Fang. That's all you need to do for Clair to just pull up on you and recognize your power, which is laughable looking back on this. I think the developers shared this sentiment because in the Crystal version, they add more content here. We have to enter the Dragon Shrine where we meet the Master, Clair's grandfather, who quizzes us on our feelings toward Pokemon. This wrap backs around pretty nicely into the arc we see them building for our rival, who seems to only want to use Pokemon for power to overcome those he dubs weak. You can answer these questions any way you please, but there are correct answers here. Just don't be an asshole. So if you answer these correctly, they will reward you with a Dratini with a powerful normal move called Extreme Speed. But after entertaining their quiz, Clair will find us and deem us worthy of the badge after finding out we've passed the test. Correction, she's annoyed that we passed the test and admits even she hasn't been approved by the Master, to which they have to yell at her to give us the badge. Finally, we received the Rising badge. I can't remember if they watered down her character a bit in the remix, but what a complete asshole. But I thought this whole ritual and shrine felt very specific, culturally. An elder in a sacred cave quizzing you on your worthiness and the importance of a dragon to all this. And there's actually locations in Japan called Ryuketsu shrines, meaning dragon hole. Shrines where dragon water deities are said to reside. There's one in Nara called the Muro Ryuketsu Shrine, where a dragon god supposedly lives inside a cave, and historically, Japanese emperors would send messengers there to pray for rain. So I wouldn't be surprised if that inspired this set piece. But if anyone knows any more, please feel free to leave it in the comments. But finally, we've collected all 8 badges. It's been a long road, but finally we have what's needed to challenge the Elite Four and the champion. But there's some last minute things to do here before we go. So it's practically an hour and 30 minutes into this video. Congrats for you making it here. I'm just popping in to say I'm going into minimal edit mode. So from now on, don't be disappointed with the edits. I'm just getting right to the nitty gritty because this is grueling, bro. Join my Patreon. Totally optional. But I'd appreciate if you did. Blackthorn City actually leads all the way back down to New Bark Town, bringing our journey full circle. And there are 2 ways that you can take to get there. Down the mountain path of Route 45, or you can even backtrack through that dark cave we saw at the beginning of the game, now fully accessible to you. But take the path all the way down and we're back in New Bark Town. And being here feels like a nostalgic reminder of how far we've come. It's a cool time to visit your mom and see all the cool decorations she's bought for our room. But before we head to the Pokemon League, there are a few loose ends we should address, namely Suicune. This requires us to head back to Ecruteak's Tin Tower, and with both the Fog Badge and Clear Bell in hand, the monks of the tower will allow us to ascend where we face the Wise Trio, caretakers of the tower that while battling us will disclose the legend of Suicune. And they tell us Suicune is a Pokemon that will appear when a trainer has the ability to touch the souls of Pokemon, and will emerge to put them to the test. So now it's obvious what it saw in us. We also learned that the two towers, the Brass Tower now burned down, and the Tin Tower, were the place where Pokemon are said to awaken and rest, respectively. A massive silver-colored Pokemon used to make roost at the Brass Tower before lightning occurred, so yes, yet another mysterious Pokemon used to roam these parts. But after defeating the trio, they allow us to proceed further. Suicune is waiting for us. I love how the other two make a cameo here and then bounce. But yeah, the long-awaited face-off with this 90s paper cup-colored Pokemon begins now. The battle itself isn't the challenging part, of course, it's catching this thing. Legendaries are even harder to catch in Gen 2, so for Suicune here, even if his health is low, and I'm throwing the best Pokeballs at it, the Ultra Ball, it still has a 2.246% chance of successful capture. To make matters worse, most status effects, as I mentioned before, are bugged. So unless you put it to sleep or freeze it, the odds of capture won't increase. And even if I put it to sleep or freeze it, you're now at a whopping 6.1% capture rate using Ultra Balls. These are the best odds that you have, so stock up on those balls and good luck. I think I had to attempt this at least 3 times on stream. No way I just casually caught that while I was Googling something. But with genuine persistence, Suicune is now subjected to eternal servitude to us. Yucine watches the whole thing and congratulates us on the capture, and vows to study up on the legends here. But after the battle, the wise trio disclose even more information. The Pokemon who revived the legendary beasts after they perished in that fire was a rainbow-colored Pokemon known as Holo, who's said to reside in the heavens. So it seems even though we have Suicune in our possession, more legends loom over Johto. And there are a couple other Crystal exclusives that I haven't mentioned, the major one being the Battle Tower. This added location exists west of Olivine City, and it's a place where you can take on trainers under very specific rule sets, much like tournament-style restrictions. You can bring 3 of your Pokemon to challenge 7 trainers in a row while under these rule sets, like not being able to use healing items and specific level restrictions. And winning would net you items like vitamins for your Pokemon. And the Battle Tower would be implemented in future generations after Gen 2. But in Gen 2, I never really saw the point in taking on this challenge unless you really enjoy battling. But then I learned more about what this place really is. Exclusive to the Japanese version of Pokemon Crystal, the Battle Tower served as the first stab at online multiplayer for a Pokemon game. You could battle other players here remotely and enter Battle Tower challenges against teams built by real players in the year 2000. How could they possibly achieve this with a Game Boy Color? Well, it was through another fancy peripheral called the Mobile Adapter GB. Using this device, players in Japan could connect their Game Boy Color to a cell phone and access online features. Both in the Battle Tower and another building totally non-existent in the international release called the Pokemon Communications Center. Located in Goldenrod City, where the Pokemon Center is, this building was used to host trades via the mobile phone and even broadcast news and provide trainer data from players across Japan. These features were the whole reason Crystal existed in the first place. The game was originally developed under the working title Pokémon X. Yeah, it's funny we later actually got that game. And Game Freak bigwig Ken Sugimori stated that Crystal was primarily built to support Nintendo's launch of the mobile system GB service, with the name Crystal referencing crystals used in electronic transmissions. Years before Wi-Fi was standard in handhelds, they were already thinking about connected play. The service didn't last long though, and of course never made it outside of Japan. And the Mobile Adapter GB was a failure for Nintendo, only managing to sell 80,000 units in a year. So unfortunately, while you can access the Battle Tower in international versions of the game to fight NPCs, the Japanese version has fully closed its doors. Well, it's time we close this out by heading straight to Victory Road. Much like the last game, it's conveniently right beside our hometown. By surfing to the right of New Barktown, we touch ground, and this man congratulates us on taking our first step into Kanto.
Oh my god!
I love that this guy is here, by the way, because the developers definitely wanted you to feel that reveal. We've returned to the Kanto region. I'm not entirely sure if it's blatantly revealed that Kanto is a stone's throw away, but it seems to be hinted at with Oak, Team Rocket, and Lance roaming around. Either way, now being back in Kanto, we traverse Route 27 and 26 toward Victory Road. A great place to catch up on experience points because there are a lot of trainers along the way. We pass through the Pokemon League gates and forward to Victory Road, which since Gen 1 has been severely trimmed down, but I welcome this change because Johto was very dense. But before we can proceed, we're stopped by Silver, who still insists we're much weaker than him since he has the best and most powerful Pokemon team out there, which leads to our battle. And he's fully stocked this time with 6 Pokemon. Sneasel, presumably stolen from that poor guy in Cianwood, Magneton, Haunter, Kadabra, his fully evolved Chikorita, Meganium, and Golbat, which is a nice detail here implying it's not happy enough to have become a Crobat. I think this was 100% intentional. But Silver isn't yet strong enough for us, despite him admitting he gave it everything he had. Lance's words weigh heavily on him, and in a slight twist, instead of him pressing on toward the Elite Four, he admits he still has work to do to become stronger, and even gives us slight words of encouragement, in his own way, before running off. So with no other distractions, it's time for the Elite Four. Let's take a look at our final team. The Red Gyarados, saved from the Lake of Rage. Crobat, once the happiest Zubat in all of Johto. Rocky, the placeholder of Steel. Alakazam, Elemental Puncher number 1. Electabuzz, Elemental Puncher number 2, and our all grown-up starter, Feraligatr. So we step through the doors, and it's immediately apparent the Elite Four roster has changed. This is Will, who was just accepted into the squad. It's interesting to see the ice left over in this room from Lorelai's time here, but Will is a master of psychic types, including 2 Xatu, a new psychic flying type introduced in Gen 2. According to the Pokédex, South Americans say its right eye sees the future while its left views the past. And though a psychic team sounds pretty scary, we prepared for this moment and have an answer for each of Will's Pokemon, even his beefed up Slowbro. And with his defeat, we move on to the next room where we meet Koga? Yes, it's Koga! You're that gym leader from the last game! Promoted to the Elite Four, Koga flexes his poison types and his tricky style of battling by inflicting Pokemon with effects like poison and confusion. But since poison are weak to psychic types, this is an easy sweep for Alakazam. He does throw a curveball at us though with Forretress, Pineco's evolved form, which is a bug steel type, specializing in defense. But fire rips through this pretty easily. Next up, Bruno, another familiar face. By the way, do you all think Agatha is dead? Timeline-wise, we haven't seen this lady since the Pokemon Red and Blue era, now that I think about it. So can someone check on Professor Oak too? They're probably all getting pretty old. I know they're in that Pokemon Masters spin-off game, but I'm not counting that. Anyway, Bruno has upgraded his team with a new Hitmontop, but otherwise it's mostly the same team from last time, with Machamp as his strongest Pokemon still. We then face Karen, the Dark-type master. Karen is an underrated snack, by the way, but she flexes the newly introduced Dark-type with Umbreon, Murkrow, Houndoom, and because why not, Gengar and Vileplume. Houndoom is a badass Pokemon though. After commending our skills and our love for Pokemon, Karen sends us ahead to face the champion, Lance. I will say this choice of champion always disappointed me since he technically wasn't even the champion when we faced him in the first game. Our rival took that spot, and here Silver is clearly meant to be a totally different type of rival. So something feels off, and I'll admit I remember feeling unsatisfied that Silver never made it here. There's no personal score being settled this time, so all that's left is for our trainer to face this Dragon Master once again, and it opens with one of the best tracks in the game. A song with a mixture of several leitmotifs from the main Pokemon theme and the original Gym Leader theme from the first game. It's mwah. But Lance's team once again suffers the same problem. The Dragon roster in Gen 2 is still pretty sparse. So his team is comprised of not 1, not 2, but 3 Dragonites. Because I guess the 2 Dragonairs he had before evolved. And yes, they're all fully equipped with Hyper Beam. And look at his remaining Pokemon. They're just Pokemon who are not dragon types that could pass as dragons in looks. Gyarados, Aerodactyl, and his brand new Charizard. But the most troublesome Pokemon on his team are definitely the Dragonites. Nothing a few Ice Punches can't solve though. Yeah, we got infinite TMs of this shit for sale in Johto, bruv. And after Feraligatr takes down his Charizard with an easy surf, we've officially become the new champion. And Lance tells us that our Pokemon has responded well to our strong and upstanding nature. This is a good bookend to this message around treating Pokemon with respect and seeing them as allies that we see in several parts of the game. But the convo is interrupted by Oak and his co-host Mary, who complain about missing the battle and are desperately trying to get an interview with us. Oak does give a similar speech about love and trust to our Pokemon, which makes me feel like he says that to everyone. You just want my Pokedex data, don't lie. Lance kindly escorts us out of the room into the Hall of Fame where we carve our name in Pokemon League history, and the credits roll. What a phenomenal game. Every time I go through credits for these older games, I get nostalgic for these people. Where are they now? It must be an honor to put your name on such a beautiful piece of media. But just because the credits roll doesn't mean our adventure is over. There's much more in store for our trainer. I wouldn't be surprised if some people put the game down here and didn't hit continue. Once we're back in Newbark Town, we get a call from Professor Elm, who has a boat ticket waiting for us to board the SS Aqua that's now docked over in Olivine City. And this destination is none other than the Kanto region. We head on board and it's more or less a mirror of the SS Anne from Red and Blue. You can travel through the cabins and battle trainers on board while also searching for some guy's granddaughter, who doesn't seem to be doing much to find her, by the way. But I do want to call out the difference between the SS Aqua and SS Anne. The SS Anne was a luxury cruise ship, but you didn't have the opportunity to fully travel on it at sea. But it did feel more rustic, and I'll never forget how they traumatized me with that episode where the whole damn thing sank in the anime. The SS Aqua is a speedboat instead. Once again, we're shown times are changing. But we find the gentleman's daughter has been pestering the captain, and when she's found, we arrive back in Vermilion City. Though that first step in Kanto prior to the Elite Four is iconic, when you step out into a familiar city like this, you truly feel the weight of this moment. You're back in Kanto. And not only that, the entirety of the region is at your disposal. For first-time players in 2000, discovering an entire second region was mind-blowing. I'm sure everyone remembers the moment they discovered they'd once again get to travel through the region they were so familiar with. It's not surprising to know they wanted to pack in a large region into this game, especially since the beta originally planned a region based on the entirety of Japan. And as I mentioned before, Kanto was going to be shrunk down to a city on that original beta map. But somewhere along the line, they landed on 2 regions. While many believed they managed to reach this technical marvel through a famous contribution from former Nintendo CEO Satoru Iwata, who helped them fit it on the cartridge, he actually worked on compression tools that made the game run faster. To fit this on the cartridge, they just got a cartridge with a larger file size. Though this doesn't undermine the groundbreaking work Iwata did for the Pokemon franchise. But now that we're back in Kanto, we're free to explore the region as we please. Seeing we walked through all these cities in the Gen 1 video, we know this place like the back of our hand. Like, this guy here after 3 years is still working on this building in Vermilion City, wasting mad taxpayer dollars here. But another revelation we get when we arrive in Kanto is that we can visit the gyms again, with the closest gym being the home of Lieutenant Surge, who seems much less stressed after 3 years. So not only can we explore Kanto again, we can take on the gym leaders and earn 8 more badges. And if that wasn't enough, the battle begins and it's a completely different gym theme from what we've been hearing this whole time. Oh my gosh, all of this just fucks. This theme is a completely cracked out remix to the original gym theme, and it just carries so much more gravitas. I never use that word, so you know it means something. If this entire soundtrack feels different, it's because Junichi Masuda brought in reinforcements this time around, with Morikazu Aoki and Go Ichinose, who is now a longtime music veteran for the series, though Masuda is responsible for this banger track right here. Gold and Silver has one of my favorite soundtracks in the series, chalk it up to my nostalgia, but something about all of these tracks felt like a perfect bookend to the journey that was started in Red and Blue. And a lot of them almost come off as melancholic, with songs that seem to lean into a lot more minor keys. Maybe a lot of this was to represent that older, mysterious region of Johto, but many of the leitmotifs that you hear are familiar and come from the original soundtrack of Gen 1. But either way, it does feel like it has this much darker sound that's more pleasing to the ear. Anyway, as exciting as it is to fight Lieutenant Surge again with his Pokemon being stronger than last time, we are the champion after all. So these gyms are more of a victory lap than anything else, so I won't be covering each city in detail like Johto. So as you revisit some of the old towns of Kanto, there are quite a few changes, but after traveling in Johto all this time, it is so quiet here. It's almost sad. Even the big cities like Celadon and Saffron don't hold a candle to the design of Goldenrod. But you can take the magnet train now. Now that Kanto is open to us, we find there's a direct service from Saffron City to Goldenrod City. A nice nod to the bullet trains that travel from Tokyo to Osaka. And remember Fuchsia City, that tourist trap that had a zoo with shitty conditions and the safari zone that I absolutely hated? Well, all of that is gone. Seems they packed it up and the town feels like a ghost town because of it. There's this interesting dialogue here explaining the warden just closed everything down, took his money and went overseas, which definitely leads me to believe he was laundering money here. And now this town is doomed because of it. But since Koga is now in the Elite Four, his daughter, Janine, replaces him as Fuchsia's gym leader, carrying on her father's ninja ways. Another interesting stop is Lavender Town, once a place where people laid their Pokemon to rest and where you can pay your respects. In Gen 1, the Pokémon Tower was that specific location where they buried Pokémon, but 3 years later, the entire thing has been gutted and replaced with a radio tower instead. The music that was famously creepy in nature now takes a more positive twist. As a kid, I remember being like, oh nice, they made this place less dreary and they're happy now. Progress. But is it? Playing as an adult, I've realized Lavender Town is a victim of corporate greed. They demolished the Pokémon Tower, a place to pray and respect the dead. Filled with Pokémon graves, they steamrolled sacred ground and shoved the remainder in this stupid little building beside it. I think this ties directly into the idea of old versus new once again. We even see the guy behind it hanging out inside the tower, fretting that the broadcasts are down because of an issue at the nearby power plant. Wait a minute, power plant? The abandoned one where we found that Zapdos last time? Well, turns out they decided to revive this facility, and the source of their problems right now is a thief who broke into the plant and stole a part that brought all their systems down. So as we continue to beat gym leaders, we decide to track down this thief, which brings us back to Cerulean City, home of Misty, the gym leader of water types. But when we try to head into the gym, it's empty, except for this guy. Yeah, definitely our thief. This is a Rocket member that didn't seem to get the memo that they disbanded, and this turns out to be one of the weirdest but funniest interactions in this game. This guy is portrayed as a foreigner, but it just doesn't land well. He talks like Majin Buu.
Oh wait, Boo should wash before eat.
And he gets so much dialogue too. But we beat him in battle and he tells us that the stolen power plant part is hidden in the gym, before getting completely mind blown that Team Rocket was destroyed and no reinforcements are coming. You say what? Team Rocket bye-bye? A go-go? Oh no, should I do what now on from me? Man, I hated that character. Turns out this guy would make an appearance in the Unova region in Pokemon Black. So this guy was supposed to be a Pokemon version of an American this entire time. You can actually travel further north. Unfortunately, the cave where Mewtwo was hiding is now sealed off completely. And if we head toward Bill's house, we stumble upon a little something we shouldn't have seen. Misty, caught up in some funny business. I love how this guy just bolts the moment he sees us. That guy definitely has a wife at home. And Misty will call us a pest for interrupting their little tryst. But now freed up, we can face her in battle at the gym. And I really like Misty's upgrade here. It's cool to see meaningful changes to designs that showcase that 3-year difference. So once she's defeated, we grab the missing part from the gym and restore the power plant, which fixes things going on at the radio tower. We can now listen to the Kanto radio, which is lacking, but they do have this Poke Flute station, so you can wake up and catch the sleeping Snorlax near Vermilion City. We can also check back in on Pewter City, home of the Pewter Museum of Science, which I was very disappointed to find out was closed for renovations. There is a guy here that was initially from Johto who will give us the Silver Wing. We'll pocket that for now. But the only other thing we can really do is check in on old Brock. I think Brock gets the most interesting update to his roster. Once having just a Geodude and Onix, he has several new Pokemon like Rhyhorn, but more interestingly, the fossil Pokemon Omastar and Kabutops. I have this theory that the museum is closed because they revived all their fossils and Brock got dibs on them. Though his fight is still easy, it's definitely the most interesting change of lineup. You can also head out to Mount Moon east of here, which is much smaller in size than the original game, but you can visit its summit, and on Monday nights, Clefairy will dance here. It's cute because you can just smash their beloved Moonstone in front of them. But Mount Moon is where we'll have our final encounter with Silver, but now he's very different. He says he now understands why he was lacking with his Pokemon, and challenges us to one last battle. I love the detail here. They change his look to be more confident and collected, and we take on his final team, Sneasel, Gengar, Golbat, Magneton, Alakazam, and Meganium. But this time when we beat him, he says we won fair and square, but still vows to be the greatest Pokemon trainer because he has his Pokemon with him, implying that he now cares deeply for them. Many people rank Silver high up on their list of Pokemon rivals, and there seems to be a lot of show don't tell happening with his character arc, implying he's this deeply troubled child from a very harsh background. You can tell Game Freak wanted to take a more nuanced approach than what they did with Blue from the original games. This guy isn't afraid to get physical, steal, and has a deep hatred for the weak that seems to be a projection of himself. But I think that mystery made people like this character as a rival even more. But in the Heart Gold and Soul Silver remakes, that officially makes Silver Giovanni's estranged son, which would round out his story arc much more. It's been so long since I played the original, I totally forgot that connection wasn't even established here, but you could say the ingredients are present due to his nature and hatred of Team Rocket. Though his character arc ends at Mount Moon, you can rematch Silver on Monday and Wednesdays at Indigo Plateau. And yes, finally that Golbat is happy enough to become a Crobat. It's the little things. So with 2 badges remaining, we gotta head all the way south to Cinnabar Island, but that takes us through a few familiar locations. The first being the Viridian Forest, once a maze-like forest that served as the first dungeon in Red and Blue. But it's been reduced to this, a shadow of its former self and a victim of deforestation. They don't say that in the game, but that's my headcanon here. And as we pass through Viridian City, it turns out the gym leader isn't present at the moment, which brings us to Pallet Town. I remember feeling something in the pit of my stomach when I first revisited this town. Considering the amount of hours I put into these 2 videos combined, I'm also getting nostalgic for different reasons. But nothing here has changed. The first thought you have is, where is our trainer from the first game? What happened to him? We find Mentok over here isn't home at all. In fact, his mom says he hasn't been seen in 3 years. He hasn't called and she has no idea where he is. And she says no word is proof he's doing fine? Okay, lady, this is a 14-year-old you're talking about, what? And if we go to our old rival's house, his sister Daisy is here, who tells us he's now a gym leader. And Oak is still here, of course, only to check on our Pokedex. Alright, so Pallet Town is pretty boring, so we continue south along the water to Cinnabar Island. Not before this swimmer asks us to rub suntan lotion on her. So we arrive at Cinnabar and, well, something clearly isn't right. The Pokemon Center is here, but the rest of the island is gone. And we learn at the Pokemon Center that the volcano erupted 1 year ago. And we also learn that the gym leader Blaine is now holed up at the nearby Seafoam Islands. I guess we'll go find him there, but how incredibly ballsy to just blow up a volcano from the previous game. The Pokemon Mansion, gym, mart, science facility, all of that is gone. You have to wonder what happened to the people. There's also one more individual hanging out here, and it's none other than our old rival, who immediately boasts he was once champion until that meddling Mentok came along, but he seems to have matured a lot. Also not in the mood to battle due to taking in the level of devastation on this island. And he says this profound thing of how Pokemon trainers always win and lose, but nature can make us lose at any moment in time. Still, he invites us to the Viridian Gym to face him whenever we're ready, and we'll take him up on his offer, but first, how's old Blaine doing? Yikes. Alright, well let's just get this battle out of the way. I think it's here I got a very different interpretation of Kanto than my playthrough as a kid. As a whole, Kanto is vastly untouched, but very different, like it's decaying. Outside of the game's lore, this is clearly because of space limitations, but is it just that? There's some cleverly disguised world building here through those limitations. That building is unfinished. Major attractions around the region are now closed. Many of the gym leaders seem checked out. Poor Blaine here is hosting gym battles out of this tiny cave by himself for over a year. Landmarks like the Viridian Forest and Pokemon Tower are gone or diminished. Kanto comes off as a region in the middle of some type of transition, whether that be a full decline or a renewal. And sadly, we don't really know what the region truly looks like after this point in time, not counting the Let's Go games. Everything in Pokemon Gold and Silver seems to be about change and growing up. From the moment you start with a new trainer, the game is already replacing what you knew. Your rival is a delinquent rather than the familiar childhood friend. All these new Pokemon and game mechanics. The gym leaders in Johto are assholes and 2 of them don't respect the code. You have ancient towers being converted to radio towers. Even Team Rocket is begging for the past to come back and it won't answer. And now this. The entire region you experienced and got familiar with in the last game has quietly fallen apart. Game Freak intentionally made a game that was both a new adventure, but also has this subtle message that the world you grew up in will not always stay the same way you left it. Things change, things die, and something new will always take its place. But personally, I think Game Freak is well overdue to fulfill their original vision of unifying the Japan-based regions in one massive Pokemon game. Imagine the modern day return to Kanto, Johto, Sinnoh, and Hoenn with some of the gaps filled based on their original plans for Gold and Silver. And I think a lot of these lingering threads can get some closure with a modern day check-in on each region. Based on some leaks, there are rumors around a large project like this called Project Seed that Game Freak might be working on as their next big Pokemon game after Gen 10. But we'll see where that goes. All I know is that I want to see this building in Vermilion City finished once and for all. But we return to Viridian City and Kanto to get our final Kanto badge. And I must say I love how it's just our old rival here. The empty gym comes off like he doesn't care much for the role and takes on trainers he feels are worthy. Also, did he fill up this building with Legos? But before our battle with the former champion begins, he still has some spunk to him, mocking Johto gyms. And I don't blame him because a couple of them are assholes anyway. And his team is more or less identical to his final team in the original game. At this stage, I was actually falling behind in levels, with Blue's team reaching high 50s while I was still in the low 50s. But type advantage was carrying me at this point, and I was willing to take the risk. So in the first try, we best him, with him admitting that we're a good trainer, vowing to beat us someday. And so with that, we get our 16th badge, and it feels like now there's not much else to do. So we should close out our time in Johto by catching the remaining legendary Pokemon flying around. We take the magnet train back to Goldenrod City, and this is the point where Crystal is a little bit different. In Gold and Silver, you get the item from the Radio Tower Manager, which will allow you to either access the Tin Tower or Whirl Islands respectively to catch whatever Pokemon you have on your box. Then you had the ability to catch the other one once completing the game. In Crystal, we just have Suicune, so to organize our meeting with Ho-Oh, it's much more difficult. You actually have to catch the remaining legendary beasts, Entei and Raikou, which is a major test of patience. Only then will you be rewarded with the Rainbow Wing by the Wise Trio at the Tin Tower, after letting you know Ho-Oh has descended. So you'll need to ascend the tower, navigate these jump puzzles, and you can catch Rattata here if you haven't already. Once you reach the roof of the tower, Ho-Oh awaits to test you. I always wonder if these legendary Pokemon mean to get captured by these trainers they test, by the way. Life flying through the heavens and resurrecting dead Pokemon seems like a happier life, just saying. But on the flip side, there is the Whirl Islands. This was another test of patience because they're split into 4 different islands on the map that you need the HM for Whirlpool to access, but also inside you need Flash to be able to see. And there are several great items in here, but we're gunning for another legendary Pokemon and there's only one right path. And it's like they designed this place to piss you off because one wrong move and you're back outside surfing to the right island trying to find the way forward. But deep within the island's depths is that large silver Pokemon that once used to roost at the burned tower, Lugia. Did you feel like Ho-Oh got a lot more special treatment than Lugia here, who was stashed at the bottom of a cave? You'd be right. Ho-Oh was a Pokemon that was on the back burner for Game Freak for a long time, revealed as far back as 1996, and famously teased in the very first episode of the Pokemon anime. It has a story directly tied to the legendary beasts, and is revered by the people of Ecruteak City, while Lugia is just here. Well, Lugia's conception was closely aligned with the development of Pokemon's second animated movie, Pokemon The Power of One, or Pokemon 2000 in North America. We loved slapping the year 2000 on everything back then. And this Pokemon was written to star in that movie and was dubbed Pokemon X, originally going to be the creator of all life on Earth. And that Pokemon was going to have a maternal relationship with the universe, but ultimately, Lugia would be the design submitted to fulfill this role, and was changed to become a guardian of the seas instead. And while Lugia originally wasn't even included in early builds of Gold and Silver, it made it to the final product as the counterpart to Ho-Oh, which is probably why it's barely mentioned in game. Alright, so with Lugia caught, we've seen everything Johto has to offer, right? Well, there's one more thread we haven't gone back to, and it's that guardian deity in the Ilex forest. Building on the same hype as Mew in Gen 1, Game Freak created yet another Pokemon that was unobtainable unless certain real-world conditions were met. Exclusive to Pokemon Crystal is a special item called the GS Ball, a key item that could only be obtained in Japan through using the mobile adapter GB to access a special event. A trade corner attendant would give the player the GS Ball, which could then be taken to Kurt to analyze, and after some time, the Ilex forest will come alive, with the trees shaking as its guardian awakens. Offer the GS Ball to the shrine and Celebi, the time travel Pokemon, will appear. And since the mobile adapter GB was never released in the West, there was a special event planned to allow players outside of Japan to catch Celebi, but that never came to fruition, making it yet another elusive Pokemon. It wouldn't be until they re-released the game on the 3DS Virtual Console where folks in North America could finally, officially get their hands on one. Even in the anime, the GS Ball made an appearance with Ash carrying this thing around for so much time until they ultimately dropped the plot point of Celebi being inside. This would end up pushing Celebi's first anime appearance to the 4th movie, Celebi, the voice of the forest. Or as we knew it in the US, Pokemon Forever. This is awful. What an awful name. But with all of that out of the way, there's one last location we can now access. If you explored the Pokemon League gates, you'd remember there was a path to a special place called Mount Silver, a mountain with rarer Pokemon only the most skilled trainers can access. Resting right between Kanto and Johto, this is a clear reference to Mount Fuji, and it's the final place you can explore post-game. And with all 16 badges in hand, Professor Oak gives us permission to head there. I'm trying to remember when I first came here what I was expecting. Maybe the possibility of another legendary Pokemon or items to unlock something new. It was much easier back then not to spoil things for yourself. But inside Mount Silver is a much quieter cave than others. No trainers to battle this time around, it's just us and the mountain. Still, the dungeon itself is pretty small, but as we climb, we finally reach the summit where we realize that we're not alone here. There's a lone trainer here, and as we get closer, it becomes very apparent who this is. It's us. I remember exactly where I was when I first triggered this battle, and I remember almost feeling fear. After overcoming this phenomenal sequel, the final challenge of the game is to face your own trainer from the previous game. I'm actually proud of my little hacking skills to get my original trainer's name into the game, so give me some props in the comments.
Man, shut your
But this is a kid who we watched leave Pallet Town, crush Team Rocket, and become the champion. And after his mom hasn't heard from him in 3 years, we find him here, by himself. I would say this is one of my top 5 moments in gaming. And to cement the impact further, it's our team. They're all here. Blastoise, Charizard, Venusaur, Snorlax, Pikachu, and even our little Eevee. It became an Espeon. And if that isn't enough, their levels are ridiculous. They're all in the high 70s, with Pikachu here at a whopping level 81. This is the hardest battle in the game by a wide margin, and it's not even close. I didn't even train up for this, so I had to lock in on stream to get through. And I'll let him die out with the toxins, and then I'll get the rest of my team back up while I have the time. You'll recall earlier I mentioned disappointment in having to face Lance as the champion, and Silver not feeling much like a rival, especially when he didn't press on to face the Elite Four. This moment is the reason why. Silver was never truly our rival. The game withheld the real confrontation with ourselves, our old self. So humor me here. There was a 2-year gap between the release of this game and Pokemon Red and Blue. Many of us were younger kids when we first stepped into the world of Pokemon, and for kids, a couple years is a long time. But we were more mature now, probably on our way out of elementary school. Everything in Gold and Silver is new to us and upgraded. And we take on a role of a totally different trainer, and the winds of change within this world are everywhere. And once that sense of comfort is established and we're the champion again, we climb this mountain and you find your 8-year-old self up here, preserved in amber and undefeated. And the only way to finish this game is to let the old you go. Mentok, it's not that deep. This is such deep slop. All right, go back to your Coco Melon, kid. Anyway, facing off against trainer Mentok here was a fun challenge as I barely managed to scrape by. Pikachu is a high level, but still pretty brittle and crumbles from a well-placed earthquake. But it is Snorlax. Snorlax. This thing is brutal. High defense, punishing moves, and it can rest to heal up a majority of its health. And now it can use a move called Snore, where it can damage you while it's sleeping. This should be illegal. And it was practically a defense off between him and Steelix, but with enough earthquakes, we took him down. And after more hardship with the others, we're finally left with his final Pokemon, Blastoise. It's our Squirtle that we trained up so long ago, now our opponent. And it takes everything from our remaining Pokemon. Thunder punches from Alakazam tear through its defenses and paralyze it, but it still managed to get a Surf off and faint Alakazam. So all that remains was our own starter, Feraligatr. But with the boosted water effect of Blastoise's Rain Dance, he screws himself, and we manage to take him down. And as we triumph over ourselves, in response there's just silence. Trainer Mentok disappears into the wind, and then the credits just roll. This gave me chills, but it's an amazing payoff for Gen 2 and such impactful closure for the first 2 games. While we see this wasn't supposed to be the last game, it was clear that Game Freak put passion into this game like never before, without really thinking of what would come after. I think nowadays games that are made with this intention of becoming a series, with many stories ending with sequel bait at the end of it, and planned features intentionally being held off for future titles. After the lessons they learned from Gen 1, Game Freak set out to develop the ultimate Pokemon game, and I think they managed to accomplish that here. Gold and Silver, I think, is part of that initial foundation for modern day Pokemon because it sets so many precedents for what would come next. And it did feel like the end of something, As I mentioned, once they closed this chapter, Nintendo, Game Freak, and Creatures formed their partnership into the Pokémon Company. Satoshi Tajiri hung up his director's hat and focused on becoming a full-time CEO at Game Freak, and the chapter of Pokémon being a passion project of a tiny developer studio was now over. So when Generation 3 came along in 2002 with Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire for the Game Boy Advance, everything was new. A new region, new starters, new graphics, more new Pokémon, something that was separate from Kanto and Johto, and it felt like a new starting point for a slightly younger age group. A new age group that would fall in love with Pokémon the way I fell in love with Red and Blue at 8 years old. And in 2009, Gold and Silver would get a long-awaited remake for the Nintendo DS, Pokémon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which included so many enhancements, added plot points, extra content, and a ridiculous amount of available Pokémon to you in-game. These were remakes that many to this day consider it one of the best Pokémon games, if not the best Pokémon game in existence. And maybe at some point I'll return to it and make a proper video about it. But playing the original game again on stream in front of so many people who experienced it the same way I did was touching. It's a time capsule. And of course, I can't go back to the first moment that I played these games, because as the game seems to stress, time goes on, and things change. But reminiscing with others made me get very, very close to that feeling. I want to give a huge thank you to all my supporters on Patreon and YouTube. I know you got a ton of updates of me delaying this video, but I'm sure you can see why it took so long. My utmost thanks. This has been quite a ride. But thank you all for watching, and I'll smell you later.